Good evening. I'd like to call the City of Menasha Common Council meeting to order. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could we have the roll, please?
Alderman Rapella.
Here.
Alderman Nichols.
Here.
Alderman Taylor. Alderman Sevenick.
Here.
Alderman Kruger.
Here.
Alderman Tom Grady.
Here.
Alderman Ted Grady.
Here.
Alderman Langdon is absent.
The first item on the agenda this evening is a public hearing, and it's a proposed amendment regarding the exemption of licensed semi-trailers within the industrial zoning districts. Director Schrader, do you have any comments on this before we start?
Sure, I can give just a brief background. So previously this spring, the city brought forward a rezoning request to rezone some properties on the south side of town, including Luigi's, the Elks Lodge, as well as the C. Coakley parking lot. At that time, there were discussions from the council level regarding concerns about how the ordinance had read restricting semi-traffic trailer parking for industrial uses. So as staff took a look back, there was some discrepancy between what the current code had written as well as the signed ordinance. Taking that into consideration with the direction of the council, staff did work with Alderman Sevenick to bring back an ordinance modification to exempt out unattached licensed semi-trailers as defined by this by section 340.0157 of the Wisconsin State Statute, using the transportation of finished goods or raw materials are exempt from the requirements of this ordinance within the I-2 and I-1 zoning district, provided the trailers being staged and ancillary to the principal use of the business. These trailers shall be concealed from the public right-of-way by screening, following the transitional area requirements under section 13.1-17, or placed behind the principal building. So basically this ordinance does allow licensed semi-trailers for ancillary uses to the principal structure of an industrial property. So I did want to note that again, the previous ordinance did say tractor trailers, so that's where there was some discrepancy, because tractor trailers is oftentimes looked at and defined as the trailer attached to the actual tractor. So again, we're noting licensed semi-trailers, so they're unattached from the tractor, and as well as defining that by Wisconsin State statute.
So with that, is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on that this evening?
Sandra DeBill Taylor, 545 Broad Street. Actually, I'm here to say my opposition to the public hearings that are taking place tonight, in that it's my opinion they violate the state statutes requiring the time allotment for notice of public hearings. I brought up the same issue at the Plan Commission meeting the last time. The attorney was not present and the mayor allowed the public hearings to proceed. By state statute, they have to be published in the legal newspaper 2 times, a minimum of a week apart, the latter being a minimum of a week before the hearing. Today is the hearing. This was published Friday. That's not a week. If you had a smartphone, you could Google it. A week is 7 days. I had the same issue at the Plan Commission meeting. That gave 3 days. This is giving, and the date of publication does not count. That gave 4 days. This is giving 3 days notice before this public hearing. These hearings should not be taking place. Furthermore, later on in your agenda, you have ordinance to pass. Those ordinances were those that were
Mrs. Taylor,
spoken
this is
at the Plan
just
Commission
about
meeting.
the public hearing at this point?
I'm opposed to the public hearing.
Okay.
Thank you. And I was also opposed at the Plan Commission public hearing, and there's also a Plan Commission public hearing tomorrow that was publicized first on Friday. All of those do not meet the definition. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the public hearing this evening? Seeing no one else, we'll move on to the second public hearing, which is a amendment to Title 13 regarding the definition. Oh, this is a zoning change, I'm sorry. Relating to the definition of said, no, is, okay, Sam, I'm gonna let you go for this.
Thank you, Mayor. So the ordinance in front of us today, is to look at allowing 3 additional uses as special uses within the C1 zoning district, as well as to clarify the language across the commercial zoning districts and to define said uses. So as kind of stated, first of all, light manufacturing and assembly, printing and engraving, and research, testing, and technology-based uses are permitted within the C3 as well as the C4 zoning district. These are currently not included as part of the C1 zoning district. For an example, printing, we could look at sports graphics as being actual a printing facility. So that would have been a non-conforming, not permittable use within the C1 zoning district, where its previous location was. So what we are proposing today is to, again, add light manufacturing and assembly with the maximum building size of 25,000 square feet, printing, publishing, and engraving, maximum building size of 25,000 square feet, and research, laboratory, testing, and technology-based uses, all within the C1 zoning district, requiring special use permits. So again, those special use permits would go in front of both the Plan Commission as well as the Common Council, have the public hearings as required, and then also to thoroughly define those land uses as they were not previously defined within the zoning code. And then basically just to clean up the language within the existing C3 and C4 zoning districts to match that language, and that is done because these land uses are also noted elsewhere within the industrial districts, and our goal with this is to hopefully take a look at the overall land uses within the zoning code and make sure there's not any contradictories. So again, staff as well as Plan Commission did recommend approval of this ordinance to add those uses to the C1 zoning district, modify the text title of those within the C3 and C4 district, as well as define those 3 uses.
Much better than I did. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this evening?
Again, I want to reiterate that these public hearings should not be taking place. You should not be voting on them. But if you're going to go ahead with the meeting, I do have comments on, especially the expansion of use in the C1 district, because that's just expanding spot zoning, which is primarily, a lot of it is in residential districts, and especially when it is in reaction to a request to change this to meet the needs of a business that wants to locate in a C1 district. This isn't that we needed this. This is in reaction to a business that's seeking a special use permit for the former During's grocery store, which is going to be a public hearing held tomorrow, so that you can lay out the groundwork in order to have this business located in that building. So this is not something that needed to be done. This is something reactionary. And I don't appreciate changing our ordinances to meet the needs of a business. The business should be complying with our ordinances. That being said, I really am opposed to what we are doing is expanding the use of spot zoning. So many of these are, C1s are located in existing residential neighborhoods. A lot of times businesses move in to a commercial property, and it's after they set up shop, or it's after someone complains, that the city's even aware that they're running a business. And then they go and ask for a special use permit after the fact. And it can be abutting residential neighborhoods, especially when you're talking about expanding light manufacturing, testing, the laboratory. Now, what they're proposing for tomorrow may not be bad, but a laboratory could. I mean, you could be talking testing on animals and monkeys, or Ebola, or volatile organic compounds. You don't know what kind of testing or laboratory that includes. You don't know what kind of light in manufacturing or industrial uses are going to be in that C1 zoning, especially when we're throwing all this money at our housing rehab programs. And then you throw in a light manufacturer next door. But again, the public hearings at the Plan Commission should have never been followed up and forwarded on to the council. And tonight, these should not be taking place, especially when they're reactionary. They're not forward-thinking. They're in reaction to a request that will be coming later. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak this evening? Director Schrader, did you have an additional comment?
I meant to make the comment within my presentation regarding the first public hearing comment. So following the Plan Commission meeting, we did touch base with the city attorney regarding the public hearing notification requirements. The state statute states public hearing must be held within or posted within the 2 weeks prior. It does not state exactly a minimum a week prior. It states within the previous 2 weeks, which is looked at as from Sunday to Saturday. So anytime within those 2 weeks is what is required by state statute.
So moving forward on to the report of department heads, staff, and consultants, do we have a motion for the minutes and communications? Alderman Sevenick?
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I'll make a motion that we receive minutes A through H and communications I through K.
It's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Item F is public comments on any matter of concern to the city. There is a 5-minute time limit on public comments. If there's anyone who wishes to comment, we'd welcome you to come forward at this time.
Hi, my name is Kathy Bauer. I live at 709 Lincoln Street in Menasha, and I wanted to just make a few comments about the bond issue. I took a quick look at it, and at some point I would like an explanation as to why the sewer advanced payment was jacked, from, it went from, for a couple of years, from 50,000 down to 20,000. Basically, according to my calculations, about 1.5 million is being ballooned. It's going to balloon again then in 2032. And that's when I think these bond issues are going to expire. So it looks to me like it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. So I would like to know, and does the sewer commission know that they're going to expect this kickdown of their funding? So I'm a little bit concerned about that. In the letter from John Jacobs, in option 2, part 2, I took exception with a reduction of city services. This is a scare tactic used every time, a municipal or state wants to do something financially, and there's some concerns about it. And in my opinion, I think the city is already working with an anorexic budget, and an anorexic staffing situation. So good luck with that, because if it gets any worse, you're gonna have trouble with head count. There's other costs to that than just cutting services. And residents, good luck with that too. And in part three, you make a statement, John makes a statement about that there's no room for debt capacity for the USDA loan. When I questioned that on the 31st, and I have it, I was told that the USDA loan was not considered part of the debt capacity. So why is it being stated now that it is? So that causes some confusion to me, and this was evident in part on page 9 of the original documentation. So I'm hearing two things, and I would like to have that straightened out. And then it also looks like the city's going to be facing huge balloon payments in tax years 2028 to 2031. I think it has something to do with the bond issue. So I would like an explanation for that, and what are we going to do then in 2028? Refinance again and kick it down the road? And so, from 2028 to 2031, there's huge balloon payments showing up, much bigger than the balloon payment that you're looking for over the next 3 years, much bigger. So then, even with these costs, with the 3-year bump of 500,000, it's still gonna cost the city, although I didn't have the new numbers, it's still gonna cost us like $478,000 with controls of $50,000 per year to the debt service. Now, I'd like to know, how are you gonna do that? And under these conditions, I think that residents would still see reduced services, and the city's gonna suffer even more turnover than what they're seeing now with these kind of cost controls. So I think the question really becomes, do we bite the bullet over the next 3 years and a homeowner pays, let's say, the maximum of $200 over the next 3 years, and our tax rate normalizes after that? Or are we gonna do this and then we're just, we're kicking $500,000 down the road, and it's costing us money. It's gonna cost services. It's gonna cost money that's going out that could be paying for things potentially that the city requires. It's not that I'm opposed to it, but I think that I'm not sure that all types of scenarios were looked at, other than bond issues. So I would just recommend that this council proceeds with caution, because in 2028, I think we're going to face the same thing, but it's going to be worse than what we have now. Thank you.
Thank you. Arnie Collier, 941 Tagle Street. The question I had is, this came up kind of quick, and by chance, I knew about it 6 years ago. Peggy Steno was in charge of the books then, and she showed me this was coming someday. We're all responsible. We're supposed to take care of stuff, but now with this coming in, going the way the council wants to go, or the mayor or John Jacobs would like to go, it makes no sense to throw away that $600,000. That's the number I put on it. But it seems like you got painted in a corner, and you had to vote on something that once it happened, you can't take it back, and it's kind of like a done deal already. So I feel bad for you. I worry about the concerns of down the road and what services you might have to start looking at, or what you might have to do, and you got to be responsible, and it's going to be maybe tougher and uglier. But I don't know where, like Don was, why I didn't hear nothing about this last year, 2 years, 3 years, and now it's there. Nothing was addressed, but we put in, which we voted on, and we put in the trails and stuff, but now we're gonna pay and pay and pay and pay. Our older leaders on the council, I don't know what questions they were given or what questions they asked, but we gotta look at where we're at and what we gotta do, and it's not gonna get pretty in the next 5 years, I think, and I plan on still sticking around, so good luck for all you guys, and I thought she did an excellent job, and I think we're in for a rough road, and take care.
We're glad you're planning on sticking around, Arnie.
I got 10 left, and they've only 5 here. The winters are getting colder.
Sandra Abel Taylor, 545 Broad Street. I want to say I appreciate Ms. Bowers and Mr. Collier for their comments. I agree with them. I think we're basically have a projected shortfall of $500,000, and we're bonding for $4.15 million in order to stretch out payments another 5 years. To me, it's more of a political act because we have an election coming up and they want to keep the tax levy level, which may happen anyhow with a huge increase in assessments. Who knows? Furthermore, we're spending $500,000 in order to do this bonding, you know, and it's still going to be another $50,000 impact on the levy anyhow. So, and then thrown into a corner because you already had to pass it and we lost our state's trust fund loans. And now, I mean, honestly, the mayor will probably cut me off, but this is the type of situation the council was backed into a corner with the steam plant when Joe Logue said, do you want it to fail? And the council was forced to vote for it. So, with that said, in response to the comment by the community development director, sure, you can split hairs. Last Friday was a different week than today is Monday. Like I said, the definition of a week is 7 days. I do have an opinion from the League of Municipalities legal that they said to be a public hearing is to get the public involved, transparency, and open government. And if you want to be transparent and open, you apply the minimum standard, at least. A week is 7 days. It is also stated that way in the Plan Commission handbook that is published by the DNR. So, with that said, I would like the minutes of the Plan Commission meeting to reflect that I was opposed to both of those public hearings. It does not say that. It also, they're incorrect where it says I was opposed to the Milwaukee Street being changed into C1. I was in favor of that. I stated that still does not make the building now a conforming building because of setbacks. It still does not, it's a legal non-conforming building. So if they wanted to expand, they still don't meet the proper setbacks for a commercial district. That's what I said. Also in the minutes for the Common Council, I know I talk a lot up here, and there was an issue regarding cooperation with the Village of Fox Crossing to supply fire service. And what is included in the minutes is, and she does not want to be backstabbed. They can get everything, I mean, I would like that struck. Thank you. Then, as we go down, regarding the hotel study proposal. Again, no offense to the Community Development Department, but this was probably one of the weakest requests for quotes I'd ever seen. It sold the city short instead of promoting it. In 5 minutes, I could jot down 20-some reasons why we could use a hotel. the 640,000 people that attended EAA, the 100,000 people that attend Oktoberfest, the 70,000 people that attend Mile for Music, the Green Bay Packers on a weekly basis, the numerous headquarters that are located here in the city of Menasha, Faith Technologies, ST, Central Products, or Intertape Polymer Group, and on. The University of Wisconsin, Menasha. The corporate headquarters that are going to be located just outside the city limits in Fleet Farm, which, if not one, we have two golden opportunities for hotels. One would be right off the I-41 corridor, and one at any of the Bonta or downtown sites. I just saved you $20,000. You don't need to hire a firm to tell you this. Then, I also wanted to comment on the proposal by the Personnel Committee to hire from within for our Public Works Director. I'm opposed to that. I don't like, number one, I think at a minimum we owe it to the city of Menasha to get a full-time Public Works Director in here with a PE, a licensed engineer. I've been in that field for, I can't tell you how many years. That doesn't make me an engineer. In the interim, I could see hiring a qualified engineering firm or a firm that provides that service to oversee a lot of these projects, because there is too much on the agenda in this upcoming year just to wing it. But as a last resort, I would move someone up the ladder if they don't have a PE. You know, but we owe it to at least advertise in the League of Municipalities, the ASCE, and there's a number of publications that you can look at. And I really want to see the council and the personnel committee involved and not make this simply an ad hoc committee of staff, because that's how it's been. It should be the council chairman, head of personnel, head of the plan commission, chairman of plan commission, also chairman of Park and Rec, get the chairman from the redevelopment authority, who's actually like a citizen member. I mean, those, and then they can actually narrow it down. The mayor can make his recommendation from that narrowed list, and then the council can approve or deny it. I don't want to just see another hand-picked person. Then there is, I do have a question at the community development. There is a lot consolidation for Gosling Way. It's two lots merging into one lot. I have no problem with that. However, they did state that they want to build a house on that lot. If there is an existing house already on the opposite lot, that would be a violation, because you can only have one primary building per lot. So if they're looking at building merging these two lots into one, but then still building two houses, that's not allowed. And that's what it was hinted at with the shared driveway. So I'm just curious if he could look into that. If we're gonna have two houses on one lot, and that's because Kara Hoynan voted against it, and I'm wondering if that was the reason why. Again, when you're sitting in the gallery, you can't hear so good. But you have a mess on your hands tonight. I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Go ahead.
I'll give it a shot. Pub, 528 Milwaukee Street.
So I just want to give you a little background for those of you that may have forgotten. We met here last time after we were fortunate enough to have a member of the council come in and share with us that we were on the agenda for the following day. So we came in and spoke to you, and it was agreed at that time to take our situation back to the planning committee, situation being the changing of our zone. So I just kind of want to give you that little background. We've also attended the planning commission meeting. We've had several meetings with Sam, whether or not he likes it. So I just want to kind of give you an update. You know, after we spoke to the planning committee and talked about rezoning the property, we're currently heavy industrial, and the vote here, I guess, will be to change us to commercial. We've done a little research, so there are other possible ways that we can, you know, come together. Keep in mind, we don't want to change. We bought the property knowing that it was industrial, and we do have plans down the road, and by changing us to commercial, you are limiting us. You are limiting, I'm listening to people talk about the money. If our plan is to, and I can't tell you for sure what our plan is to, but we were planning on developing that land. If you change that zone, we're not going to do it. That means that property value is going to stay just as it is, which means my taxes will stay just as they are. I would like to think you'd want to see us use that land and earn money for you, right? For the city. I don't mean you personally. Anyways, that's just one of many things. I'm a little reluctant to share some of the information I have. I just want to make sure that I understand from the Common Council what your thoughts are. If your intention is to say, no, Barb and Bill, you have to be commercial. We 100% are not going to let you stay as you are. We're not going to grandfather you in. You know, if that's the case, I really need to understand why. And I know we've, you know, again, I've had many meetings with Sam, or, you know, enough meetings with Sam. I've had legal consultation earlier today, just to figure out what it is that is so important to the committee to have us change. Okay, that's really bothering me. I have to just say that.
And we do understand the non-conforming
Yes.
portion of this. I just said I understand, or we understand the non-conforming piece of all this. But for as long as any of us have existed, sitting here, that has been heavy industrial.
And nobody's
Back to the
given a hoot.
1800s.
Yeah.
I went to the library and I laid out maps on the floor, and it's there. And I can't come up with, I have a lot of ideas, but I can't use any of my ideas because I don't know where this is going to go after this meeting.
We've
I
been
can bring up
at a standstill.
I can bring up easements, okay? I can bring up the definition of manufacturing. Why are we non-conforming? Because we do not manufacture something? Well,
Yeah.
if we're gonna put a number on manufacturing, which you can't, because the definition of manufacturing is taking materials, putting them together to make one thing. Now, what would happen if we would start making pizzas? Would we become conforming then? Because we make old fashions, is that conforming? Because we're taking different things and putting them together to make one, and that's the definition of manufacturing. I have it written. So I don't even understand why we're not conforming.
We make good old fashions, just in case you're wondering. It's important.
So, in order to highlight some of these different options, I have to understand where you guys are coming from. Like I said, anything from easements, and we just found out today that it was said in the previous meeting that we were held up because of getting legal title to this piece of property.
Yep.
With this change, and I don't mean non-conforming, at one time, this lot was 150 by 60. I was under the understanding that we were not officially licensed in a title situation, but we are titled for 75 by 60, which is laid out, I don't know if it's been to the,
It's through Evans, yeah, it's through the title
through, yeah,
company.
through Evans Title.
Yeah.
But talking with Sam, he says now he doesn't like the fact that this was done without Menasha's approval,
It's splitting the lot.
because we're
I
splitting
think
this lot.
Yeah,
But there was no documentation to know who owned the lot next to us, even though that the previous owner was paying taxes probably for 100 years. Okay? And once again, go back to the 1800s. That lot is all the same. But we can only get the 75 by 60 titled, which then put us into business to open our doors.
yeah.
Now we figure out that it is that land next to us, it is part of that parcel. So I did a little bit more research and I found out that we are titled by Evans, legally. So, before it was because of we couldn't go to the bank and blah, blah, whatever, but now today I find out that we are. And once again, I can throw this out to say, we just need to know where we need to go. I wanna stay the way we are. I don't wanna lose the heavy industrial, status. And I know what I wanna do down the road.
Nobody's asked us what we want to
Right,
do.
nobody asked us what we wanted to do. Are you gonna do something to stay conforming? Nobody asked, they just went ahead and pushed it through and here we sit. So, do we use different options to, I don't know, put it in front of you guys to say, hey, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this, and we could do this? We don't know, because we don't know where we're going, because we have not heard from you guys as a group to how you feel about this.
What the argument is to change us.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be something more than just being conformed to our lot and what it was written back in probably the early 80s.
I mean,
I don't know.
we're not professional zone people, obviously, but we do know that, you know, the research Bill has done, we do know that the setbacks are different, the lot sizes are different, the amount of actual, the percentage of what
The lot we
land you
can build
own,
on
how much you
changes.
can build, so if you're commercial, it's 30, if it's this, it's 60, whatever, but it's all these different things, and nobody's really asking us, what we wanna do. So, but not to be, you know, not that it's not your business, but we're not entirely sure. We're not gonna be able to make these decisions until we understand where you guys are coming from.
And if this does get voted in the ways of agreeing with the planning committee, I guess my question is, once it's changed and we come up with an idea or come up with the idea and ready to do it, now we come in front of you guys again to say, hey, can you please change this back now? Because we have an idea? I mean, that sounds kinda, I don't know, you know? I mean, and in order to stay within spec, first, then it tells me what I can do and what I can't do. But I don't know what I can and can't do because the ordinances are not set out there for me, because I don't know what the vote's gonna be, and if the vote is no, then I'll go to the next option. But do I have that option? I don't know.
And I just wanna make one last comment, right, Bill? Okay.
I have no idea.
One of the comments that I heard Sandy make was that you're being reactionary to a business. And if you want the business here, and if that's what it takes, I mean, I'm not trying to disagree with her, but I absolutely would agree with making these changes for that particular business. I mean, I know that wasn't what my particular, that's not why I came up here, but yet we're in the same boat. You know, there are exceptions, and I look at that agenda, and everyone's a change in an ordinance. Well, we can't do that every week, or every month, I understand that. But there, you know, there are exceptions. It's just the way life is.
And it's just the old saying, one size does not fit everybody.
Yeah.
I mean,
True
our
that.
situation is a heck of a lot different than some other bar. We don't have neighbors except for across the street. We're next to a railroad. We're in the middle of an industrial landscape. And we're not bothering anybody. I mean, we're not encroaching on a neighborhood, you know? We don't have kids running around. We don't have none of that stuff. So it just amazes me how much effort that we are putting into changing this, which leads me to believe
There's a reason.
there's an underlying reason for this.
And we don't know what it is.
And I'm trying to figure it out, but yet, maybe someday I will, someday I won't. But until then, I have other options if it goes south for us. So.
We
and I will-
appreciate
I
your
will,
time.
you know,
And your patience, and Bill, you did good tonight. Didn't yell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no one else, we do have two groups of people that are here this evening that are, one's in the audience and one's with staff. Alderman Sevenick?
Yeah, I was gonna, as you had recommended, suggest that if it was okay with the council, so, because they're at the end of the agenda, so they don't have to, they have travel.
The other person that's here is a beverage operator's license denial,
Okay.
so I don't know if we want to take that
Well,
one
I
up
will-
as well.
I'm going to take the first one, the R2219 issue. Right?
Sure, if there's no objections. I'm seeing that there's no objections. John, did you want to start us out on this?
I was gonna say before we get going, hopefully, both of you are able to help out the audience, with some of the issues that they raised. There are a number of changes. We didn't lose the state trust fund funding. I just want to make that clear so the public understands that. What we're doing is paying that off because of lower interest rates. So just so everyone understands that, and I do think this is forward thinking. So if John, you want to start it off and
So John, could we go through a couple of the questions that the public had before we start? The first one that Mr. Collier made was this came up very quickly. And I guess we did talk about this in the 2019 budget process, and we did forward some money from the stormwater fund at that point. So we've been working on this since the last, for about a year now.
For about a year, yes. This has been on the radar, and we have kind of shared this in bits and pieces to the council. When I first came on board about 2 years ago, I did share this information with the mayor already and said we need to have a long-term plan for this. And then as we got through with the budget process last year, we did kind of make mention a little bit of this. We did make mention that we are going to find a solution on this. However, we had to have the USDA loan process churn through the channels that it had to figure out what kind of a financing option could we work with on coming up with the length of the maturity for that issue, knowing that the desire by the council would be to pay that off much sooner than a 40-year period of time, working with documents that we still are working on with, which will be coming to the council in the coming weeks for a lease agreement with the USDA loan. But the gist of it was that in the years of 2019, 2020, 21, 2022, there was a balloon, there were these large payments. Some of this was for the Lake Park Villas area, which had been refinanced several times over the last 15 years, that we can't keep, there's no way to keep pushing some of that debt off forever, so that this would have to be dealt with. So what we did is we looked at some other pieces of debt that we had that we could restructure on some CIP years of 2014, 2015, 2016, partner them together, and then come up with the structure for a refinancing package that we could work with a very level or very slow climb in the debt service levy, knowing that we had talked about with you projecting on bringing some more valuation back on the tax roll, closing some TIF districts, kind of doing them in a very staggered plan so that we would add $10 million for TIF number 3, we'd add some more for TIF number 5 close, which we just did. Looking at the next one is TIF 6 on the radar. Then looking down the road the next 3 to 6 years, TIF 9 and TIF 12. We could see the valuations that were coming. So we were kind of partnering all of this together, saying how can we have this debt restructured, a long-term plan, allow for the USDA loan to accommodate the new construction of the new public works facility, paying it off something shorter than 40 years, but to at least have to package it in a way to sell it so that we could qualify at this present time, which we do right now with the income level of the city, which we may not qualify in a year or two from now, especially when some of the census data comes out.
Okay, I'm gonna cut you off there.
Okay.
Let's try to get these couple questions answered.
Okay.
I think Mrs. Bauer was talking a little bit about, does the sewer commission
advance.
know? And I'm not sure if she was talking about the sewer commission as Nina Menasha Sewage Commission or
Stormwater.
well, this is our this is our
with
sanitary
sewer
sewer fund
fund,
at the
correct.
city. So they're two separate entities?
Yes.
And
The city council and the board of public works are the ones that are responsible for that budget for the sewer utility fund.
Yes.
So this is something that did not have to go through the Nina Menasha Sewerage Commission for this. This is something that we're doing.
So that's us up here that we
Correct.
would need to know. She also talked a little bit about capacity and debt capacity. I think that was probably just a poor choice in words, because we were talking a little bit about our debt capacity at the state level and that the USDA loan not be merged with that. And you were talking about capacity as in a manner of, can we afford to pay for it, correct?
Yes, because part of this is gonna be a lease payment to pay, that would be paid to the RDA, the Redevelopment Authority, for, who would be do the borrowing for the USDA loan for the Public Works facility.
So we do have significant capacity in our GO.
Yes,
Ability
and,
to borrow,
and
but-
Ellers can discuss that when we get to
Okay.
that point, yes.
And
they
then
do.
the final one, I don't quite understand about the balloon payments in 2028 through 31. And I don't know if you caught that one. The way I look at it, it appears that our total tax rate for debt service equalized is pretty consistent at between $1 and $1.06 from now up until 2030,
Right,
and then it goes down.
correct, what we have got is we have these larger payments for the last 4 years of this maturity, for this refunding issue, is because you have the steam plant debt. Most of that steam plant debt is out through 2027. So therefore, 2028 through 2031, we have the capacity to be able to afford a larger principal payment and not extend the term even beyond 2031. But we have to get the steam plant debt stuff paid off in full, and we're roughly paying about 1.1 million every year. You still have roughly about $12 million left out there. We're paying about roughly 1.1 off every year. The majority of it's paid off by the end of 2027. There's just a little fragment, I think maybe 125,000 that comes off for 2028, 29, and 30. So those are the years, once we got to 2028, that was when we can put the majority of the or I should say not majority, a larger portion of the principal payments can be in those years and keep this a relatively flat, very slow climb, knowing that we've got additional valuation that can help pay that debt with the $50,000 annual increase in the levy.
I just figured out what you're looking at, Kathy, I think. You're looking at a higher principal and interest payment on these bonds those last 4 years, correct? And what we were doing is try to piece this all together as a puzzle so that our total debt service was flat.
A very slow
even though
climb,
these
yes.
particular issues are higher those last 4 years. Yeah, so if you look on page 5, you'll see the total numbers at the very end of the page. It starts at page 5. It starts at 1.050 million, and it grows up to about 1.3 or 4 million, and then it starts going back down again. So we tried to keep that fairly level within $50,000 of increase per year. So I think so. That's, with the growth of our equalized value, the closure of some of our TIFs, you can see that the levy, the equalized levy, basically stays at $1 this entire time period for debt service. And that was kind of our goal, to have that
Yes.
equalized tax rate just for the debt service portion to stay at about $1. And that's what we
Correct.
succeeded in doing.
And we're still staying very conservative, that we're using a 4.5% interest rate with the state trust fund loan. It did drop to 4% a couple months ago. So we're still, because we know at some point the rates will go back up. So we do not want to be caught off guard thinking, oh my gosh, now we structured this refunding issue for the next 12 years and didn't think ahead enough to have future borrowing sizes in there for doing additional capital projects for streets or facilities or buildings, or for park system. And then also that the interest rate wouldn't climb. Obviously, it could climb. So we're factoring this all in, staying very conservative with our numbers, the way we structure this, to make this, that this all makes sense and that this is affordable of what the city can afford to do.
So I think at this point, we should let John and I stop talking and see if others have questions on the council. Did you have a question, Stan?
No, I was just gonna say that, kind of like what both you and the mayor were saying, is that we're also, taking care of debt in the future, closing out some of our TIFs. So that's gonna help, and also too, the steam plant debt will be taken care of. And so with that, I mean, that's my understanding why those, I wouldn't call them balloon payment, it's just probably regular payments at that point. Like you were saying, it kind of balances out at that point.
So should we let Ellers present their plan,
Yes,
and then we'll go
definitely.
from there?
Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll introduce first Greg Johnson and Jonathan Schatz, who we've been working with over the last number of months in restructuring all of this. This is something that I had a very generic template that I worked with, and then I handed it off to them to fit this in a lot better package, with with more pieces and more insight than with my initial thought process on it. But they took it and they produced a product here that I believe is very workable for the long-term goal of the debt service of the city.
Can I just add one more thing, Mayor? We are also going back to the state trust fund in the future too. There's some feeling out there for some reason that we're dumping this. No, what we're doing is paying it off early. We're pretty much obligated now because of the due date that we put ourselves in, and interest rates are lower. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer.
And if I could just add to that thought, with the borrowing that we had done in the fall of 2018 for the $3,890,000, that was for the 2017-2018 CIP. We're going to refinance that. We've done this a couple times over with them in the last number of months. We're at a 4.5% interest rate. Well, interest rates fell a couple months ago down to 4. Is there a possibility that that may change again here between now and the end of the year? Who knows? My crystal ball is not that clear, but at least we would package in, we would propose to the state that we're not gonna go on the market with that. We would take this $3,890,000, use the same principal payment schedule that we had proposed to them for the 15-year maturity for that, and get the interest rate lowered. That would save us roughly $185,000 just by shaving off 0.5% off the interest rate over the next 15 years. That's roughly about $12,500 a year, so that's a little more than a penny off of the rate just by doing that. But to execute that, we need to partner it with our new borrowing for 2019 CIP. So I've kind of got all the numbers preliminary from the departments of what we need for this year. So we would go and apply for that this fall and then execute all of this over the next couple months. And all of this will come before the council in the next 3 to 4 months. But that's the plan for staying with the state trust fund loan program, refinancing, and then likely doing our 2019 CIP with that.
Good evening. Just wanted to kind of echo some of the comments that John was just making, just so everyone's clear on what we've built into our model. The purpose of these refunding bonds was really to look ahead for capital needs for the city over the next 5 years. So the financing model that, you've seen before and that's updated before you again this evening, that includes the Public Works facility, and it also includes $6.3 million of new capital projects between 2019 and 2023. So this financing model looks at your needs for the next 5 years. So this is very much done with a forward-looking intention of looking at where your levy could be for debt service going forward, not just for existing debt, but showing what the impact could be for capital projects over the next 5 years. So all of that is built into this analysis. So when we talk about how the levy is going to be changing going forward, just please keep in mind that's including the Public Works facility and $6.3 million of public works projects. All of those still, require approvals going forward, but the intention for this was to plan ahead and looking at future capital needs in terms of how the debt was restructured. So that being said, you have a copy of our sale day report, and on page 1 is a summary of the sale results. The final pricing for these bonds occurred today. The purpose of this bond issue, as has been mentioned, is to refund or prepay some existing state trust fund loans and restructure those debt service payments going forward. The final amount of the bond issue that you're considering this evening is $4,090,000. The amount that you initially authorized last month was $4,250,000. So you're issuing less bonds to pay off the same state trust fund loans, which is a good thing. This was a negotiated placement, meaning we represented the village in negotiating the interest rates with the underwriter, which was Bankers Bank. The total true interest cost came in at 2.4684% for these bonds. The total debt service, the principal and interest over the life of these bonds, came in $134,510 less than what we presented to you at the end of July. So your total principal and interest cost over the life of the bonds is $134,500 less. As we mentioned, the purpose of this refunding is to restructure the debt to account for future debt issuance. That comes at a cost because you're extending out the debt beyond its maturity. We had estimated last month that cost was going to come in at over $600,000. Now the future value cost of the refunding is $495,398. So it came down considerably from our estimates that we had presented last July 29th. So in terms of walking through the rest of the report, the bid tabulation is found on page 2. See the rates that the city is going to be paying from 2020 through 2031. The rate is 1.5 to 3%. So while the interest rate can change for each maturity, these rates are fixed over the life of the bond issue. So you're paying interest of 1.5 to 3% per year. On page 3 is the comparison that we presented to you last month to the final par amount that you're considering this evening. So the amount that you needed to pay off the state trust fund loans has not changed. That's $4,153,845. That amount was verified by the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands, so that was in agreement with our analysis. We have the final transactional expenses, which are identified. Probably the two things that have changed most notably are, one is the underwriter's discount. That is what the underwriter takes as their initial form of compensation for agreeing to underwrite the bonds. That came in less than what was estimated. And then this was bid with what is called a reoffering premium. That's essentially as money that the underwriter is willing to provide the city in excess of the par amount of the bonds, and you use that to essentially reduce the amount that you need to borrow. So it's extra cash that's being provided to the city. We apply that to the bond issue so you can borrow less money. So at the end, you'll see the final number of the $4,090,000. That's the final amount of the bond issue that's in the updated resolution for you this evening. So to kind of walk our way across this analysis, it's formatted the same way as what we presented on July 29th. So starting on page 4 in the far left-hand side, the total debt payments. These are all of your existing general obligation debt service payments, taking out the state trust fund loans that you are prepaying. So you'll see that, your payments are gradually start to go down. Your existing remaining general obligation debt would mature by year 2034. Then we have a column called the proposed USDA loan. This is the estimated principal and interest annually for the USDA loan for the Public Works facility. So we've included that in this analysis as well. The column shown in parentheses across are revenue sources that the city presently budgets to make some of its debt service payments. So there's a payment in lieu of taxes, revenue that you get from the water utility that is budgeted to reduce your debt service levy. You have some investment income, an existing payment from the RDA, some existing special assessment revenue. The city advanced some money from the sewer utility last year. It's anticipated there's going to be $750,000 advanced again in 2020. You have revenue from existing TIF districts to pay for their share of debt, and then you have revenue from the water utility to pay their share of debt. So your debt service levy in 2019 was $1,050,000. We show what that net tax levy would be going forward just for the remaining debt that's outstanding that has not been refunded. The equalized value projections, these are projections using equalized value or commonly called market value. We've projected in future years the closure of TIF districts, both TID 6 and TID 9. So in the bracketed years, that value has gone up to reflect the closure of those TIF districts. Higher value can impact your tax rate. The larger the value, the lower the tax rate. So the tax rate under the existing debt column, that is your projected tax rate for debt service going forward for the remaining existing debt. So then we show the geo-refunding bonds. So that's the principal and interest that's due on the bonds that you're considering this evening. As was mentioned, the payments are higher on the back end in terms of principal, but as we'll see, that's taking into account all of your debt. Your existing debt payments drop off. So we're having the payments on these bonds be higher, so your total levy for debt service remains relatively consistent, taking into account existing debt and future debt. The sewer advance repayment, as has been mentioned, this is really at the discretion of the city in terms of how that gets repaid. We adjusted this since the city does have flexibility on how much is repaid each year. To meet the levy targets, we made the repayment a little smaller and early on, then it ramps up as some of your existing debt pays off. Again, when we're looking at the total levy, we're looking at existing debt, new debt for projects, payment of the sewer advance, everything in one model. So all of this can be looked at holistically instead of in individual parts. So on page 5, this is really all proposed new debt issuance. All subject to future action by the council, but is identifying about a little over 1.5 million of a state trust fund loan borrowing for this year. The rate's presently at 4%. We were conservative, showed it at 4.5%. And then we show 1.2 million being borrowed annually from 2020 through 2023 for projects to be determined. So all those 2019 through 2023 state trust fund loans, that's 6.3 million of new capital projects. You have an existing TID district that closed. You have some computer aid revenue that the city is going to continue to collect. That's about $225,000 per year. That is shown as being budgeted to help reduce your debt service levy going forward. So then we look under the levy and tax rate column, the total net debt service levy. This is the summation of everything we've talked about up until this point. Your existing debt, the USDA loan, the GEO refunding bonds, state trust fund loans from 2019 through 2023. That's your projected debt service levy going forward. You'll see the levy change from prior year. You'll see that that is basically changing at about a $50,000 per year increase in your levy from 2020 through 2027. Then the increase is estimated about $35,000 in 2028. Then the increase in the levy drops off going forward. So that $50,000 increase in the levy, That again covers all the new capital projects from 2019 through 2023, includes the USDA loan, includes the GEO refunding bonds, and includes your existing debt. That's everything. So that shows that you can have the Public Works facility, 6.3 million of new capital projects, and the levy goes up about $50,000 per year. Then the tax rate is shown on an equalized basis. That's the dollar per thousand. You're at $1 this year, estimated to be at about $1.06 per thousand on an equalized basis through 2028. Just to kind of give you an idea of kind of where rates have been in the bond market over the last 2 years, the chart on page 6 just shows what's called the bond buyer index. That's really the average yield on a municipal bond that matures in 20 years that has a rating of about a AA rating. So you'll see that currently that's at about 3.42%. You'll see that really rates have been trending downward rather aggressively here over the past 2 months or so. So the timing of this in terms of going through this process to kind of restructure your debt, at least from an interest rate standpoint, is, the timing was worked out favorably from that perspective. So to summarize, the intention of this plan was really to restructure existing debt to take into account capital needs over the next 5 years, including your Public Works facility, have that change in the levy be relatively consistent from year to year for budgeting purposes. You've applied some cash from the sewer utility last year and anticipate again in 2020. We're showing that getting repaid. I think that's important to get repaid because that's money that should be replenished. And the refunding, again, we took the amount of your existing debt, that could be restructured, and to accomplish that objective of about a levy increase of about $50,000 per year. So some of the debt has been extended, as we've said all along. That's come at a cost because you're extending the debt. The exchange for that is you're getting kind of the stable levy for future projects. But the cost of that refunding has come down basically due to the fact that the interest rates are more favorable than what we had estimated. So with that, the action item when you get to it is a resolution for your consideration. Just note that the final amount in the resolution is $40,090,000 because that's the final amount that's needed based on the final pricing today.
I checked with Director Jacobs earlier this afternoon. Our current GO debt for this that we're refinancing is actually $4,097,000, 269. So we're actually going to be having $7,000 fewer dollars in GO debt once we're done with this as well, as a lower interest rate. Does anyone have questions for? Go ahead, Stan.
Thank you, Mayor. I think at this point, I just want to make the motion and then maybe we can discuss. So at this time, Mayor, I'll move for our 2219 resolution authorizing the issuance of sale of $4,090,000. Is that what I'm supposed to use?
Yes. Is there a second?
Refunding bond series 2019A.
There's a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot that has been said here today. There's been, from what I understand, some internet talk, which I stay out of. But what we're doing here is we're restructuring our debt. And I heard some comments, boy, I feel sorry for you guys. You're being forced, this is being forced on you. Well, you just heard it from Ellers. The timing couldn't have been any better. If you watch the markets, interest rates in just the last month alone, not even 2 months, the last month alone, have been at their lowest. I don't think we could ever have gotten in at any better time than tonight. This helps to take care of our existing debt, which is something we should be taking care of and looking at all the time. And not only that, but it takes care of our city garage. It helps to pay for our city garage. If you don't want the city garage, then vote against this. Otherwise, I think it would be very ill-advised to not vote for this, because if you don't, number one, we're obligated now to pay the state trust fund loans. And number two, you voted to have us build a new city garage, and now you don't want to finance it. So I strongly encourage my colleagues to vote for this tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Speaking of the Public Works building, without this resolution, John, would we be able to build the Public Works facility? I mean, we could build it, but I mean, it's.
I don't know how we would pay for it.
Exactly.
Because I mean, right now, the budget amounts like roughly about $11 million. Now, albeit
Right.
we will be going out for the bidding process here in December, and then hopefully with construction starting in April 1, there will be interim financing that we'll be doing, which will come again to you, the council. So you're gonna be along with this every step of the way. So there's a number of pieces yet to keep going forward with this. But the thing is, where would you come up with the capacity to afford a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 payments in there if we did not do this restructuring? There'd be no way to have enough room there to be able to pay and remember, we're going through the redevelopment authority, the RDA, to do this because they can go out and borrow longer than 20 years. We need at least the opportunity for something longer than that to make, and you want to borrow for something that at least it's not going to exceed the useful life of it. Honest to God, we know that the old garage has been there longer than 20 years, and this opportunity gives us out as long as 40 years. But the thing is that we've already had this discussion some weeks ago already. The plan would be to try to pay it off way sooner than 40 years. We showed you a model that could get us anywhere between 22 and 25 years, realistically, depending on what the future borrowing needs are for the city. And all we've kind of shown you is if we, on average, would leave enough capacity of 1.2 million for what, and as I know, Director Radomski said to me, well, John, remember the streets today are not going to be the same what the cost they are 10 years from now. I know that. But the thing is, at least we're giving you at least a starting point to think long-term, to think that we need to have enough room for all the other needs of the city. But this USDA loan would not be possible if we didn't do this restructuring of your existing debt.
Okay, thanks, you cleared that up. There is a lot of work here and a lot of thought and a lot of time spent. So I do appreciate it, the elders, what you've put together. I think it is a good program for the city's future to look forward. Thinking, at first you might think, oh geez, what's gonna happen with the $500,000 or 600,000? But there's more to it than just a certain couple of years. So I too think this is very good for the city's future, and I will be voting for this. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Alderman Nichols.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a few questions based on the new information that's been presented for this meeting. The first of which is, I'll take page 4 of the report that was presented to us tonight. The sewer advance repayment was in the information provided on January 29th, about $50,000 annually. And I noticed right away that had been decreased to 20, and then the payments back to that significantly increase in 2032. And that, as I understand it, is about the time these bond issuances are wrapping up, the paying for those. So where is that additional money going to come from all the way to 2038? And I think this would be better for Director Jacobs.
The thing is, in the long-term plan that I had given you some weeks ago, that we went out to, with the CIP borrowing out to 2042, I wanted to go out at least 20 years looking forward and to see with what we could afford to do here with having all of the existing debt of the city would be paid off by 2033. So there is capacity with all debt that's gone, and if we stay on a level playing field of roughly 1.2 million being added every year, it is very likely that we'll be able to afford the years of 2032 through 2038 as they are right now. We will have, what you don't have projected in here is equalized valuations of TIF number 12. TIF number 12 valuation will be closing at some point by the end of roughly the 2030 decade, start of the decade there. That's adding, right now it's worth $40 million. So there is additional valuation that will be coming online. By the time the steam plant debt is gone, you add the additional 40 or 50 or 60 million dollars, and we've got additional opportunities right here in TIF 10, right in the downtown area there. No pressure on Director Schrader, but just that we've had some discussions already, both myself and Director Radomski, but there is a lot of potential here with additional valuation, closing TIFs, doing it every couple years, throwing some value back on, and if you remember in our discussion a couple months ago, we're only applying roughly about a third of that valuation is what we're thinking towards the debt service, not the full 100% of it. So we're thinking that we'll use a portion of that for debt. The monies can go elsewhere. So we're kind of thinking far enough ahead that there would be enough capacity there with additional, at least one or two different TIF districts closing sometime after 2024 to pay for those additional payments, even though they go up from 20,000 up to 155 or 160,000 a year. So there's plenty of additional equalized valuation that will be there that we have not shown here. We're staying very conservative with our estimates here.
So the short answer then is counting on additional valuation during those years
Yes.
and the levy,
Correct.
the levy.
Yes.
Okay.
In combination.
Not quite, John, because all the existing debt drops off in those years too.
Correct.
Well, that's my next question, because as Mr. Johnson indicated, the model includes new borrowing of 6.3 million for 2019 to 2023. However, the repayment period for these bonds is longer than that. I believe 2028, 2032. I'm getting mixed up on my extension
For
of years
the
here.
refunding, we're going through 2031.
2031.
Yes, March.
So that means that we're missing 8 years of potential new borrowing in our model.
If you look at page 5, on page 5 there you can see with the years going like from 2029 through 2041, we've just theoretically had a goal of what it would look like if we targeted roughly about a $50,000 increase in the levy. It's the second column from the right, the target levy from the city. Then you look at the gray shaded, or the gray headed column, levy and tax rate there. The total net debt service levy is falling. However, we understand you're going to be adding maybe roughly about $100,000 for each new issue going forward in time. So as you add, the last year that Elders had provided in this was 2023's borrowing for 1.2. That's roughly adding about $100,000 of additional debt service. You keep adding those each year on there, and then you will end up leveling off that total debt service levy so that it will probably be very close to our target amounts there of, like in the year 2033, we probably will be roughly about $1,750,000. So when you add those additional years for 2024, 25, 26, and going forward, you add $100,000 each year for those. Your net tax service or net debt service levy will be increasing roughly to get very close to those target years, with the target amount of going up $50,000 each year. So like, for instance, 2029 has right now a number of total net debt service levy of 1,474,743. There's likely a couple years of CIP for the years of 24, 25, and 26 that would, or in 27, that would need to be added there yet. That would get us a little bit closer, would put us closer to where those net levy targets are. And then as you go further down on the chart each year, you add those $100,000 increments each year. You're gonna be very close to those levy amounts there, so that you're still taking all the numbers from the page 4, adding them all the way across to page 5, and that would get us to where we had discussed this some weeks ago. If going out as far as 2042, there is enough room there with adding additional borrowing on to kind of come very close, or to try to keep this as level as possible for the debt levy going forward. Now, albeit if we find out that our street projects, we're not gonna be able to do everything for 1.2 million, maybe it goes up to 1.3 or 1.5 million going forward in time beyond 2023. Then maybe our target number here might need to go up a little bit. But then we haven't factored in what the new valuation amount is either when we start adding on TIF 9 and TIF 12 going forward with some of these additional TIFs. So there's a few things here that are both not on here on the revenue side and on the expenditure side.
So if I just look at the target levy from the city, which is the second to last column on
Yes.
page 5, that levy increases $50,000 annually, year over year, through 2033.
Correct.
What would happen in 2034?
You can see the big drop in 2034. Likely that number could go down or could stay flat, and you could use some of those monies, as we talked about. We could start to pay off and accelerate the payment for the USDA loan, so that instead of going out the full 40 years, if we can we have the capacity here in the levy. If we just stay fixed at the $1,750,000, we could probably pay off a couple $100,000 additional debt on the USDA loan each year going forward, so that instead of having the maximum year going out to 2062, we could maybe be in the years somewhere in the 2040s, shortening that up by at least 10, 15, maybe 18 years.
So what I think I'm hearing is that beginning in 2034, we would experience, could possibly experience some flexibility in direction.
Yes, and you can actually, you could probably lead up to that, even the couple years prior to that. Once the steam plant debt is off and paid off totally in full by 2030, then we can kind of have a relook at the policy and say, okay, do we want to leave it's possible the debt service levy could go down to meet the actual payment schedule. But if you want to choose, if the city council would choose to pay off and accelerate making some of the payments on the USDA loan or any of the other borrowing issues, it could be done. And you would set that in your annual budget appropriation each year then to do that. We wouldn't be required to.
Be about 8% then.
We sure would hope not. Although for the investor, that's what they want, but.
Okay, and where are the, this loans through the state trust fund, that the $4 million in loans that now needs to be paid off, what interest rate?
Those
Were
are
they
all,
getting?
all 5 of them are at 3%.
Okay. Thank you. So the loans that we're about to pay off are currently at 3%. The bond issuance starts at 1.5, and in 2031 ends at 3%.
That is
Am I
correct.
reading that correctly? So that's a
Yes.
gradual increase in interest over the life of the loan.
Correct.
And that is coming at a cost of $495,398 in additional interest over the life of those.
By lengthening these 5 maturities from 2026 to 2031, yes. Yes.
Thank you. 2026 to 2031. Okay. The objective, as stated, is to flatten out the debt service tax levy for future years. And yet, what is presented this evening to do that actually increases the debt service levy year over year until I have too many papers here. 2032 or thereabouts. So every year, the cost will increase, and it costs us more over the time of those loans. It'll cost almost $500,000 more to lengthen those loans. If, I know it's not possible today, but if we were to add the $500,000 shortfall for 2020 onto the levy, that would add 50 cents to the rate, as indicated in your memo, correct? Or thereabouts, that was the memo we had the other day. So tell us what that means for residents in Menasha. What does it mean on their tax bill?
With roughly about a 50% increase in the levy, if we were not to do this and just go ahead and pay the debt off as it was scheduled, you're adding, for a $100,000 home, would be paying additional $50 on their tax bill for the next 3 years, at least. It goes up it had gone up just a little bit, I think, in 2020, and then a little higher in 21, and then 22 went up a little higher than that each year.
So a little more than $1, or a little less than $1 a week on a $100,000 home.
Yes.
On a $200,000 home, you can
Be
double
twice
that. And if you're
Yes.
somewhere in the middle or over that, you can kind of judge where that might be. $1 or $2 a week. $1 or $2 a week for the next year, and $1 or $2 a week for the next year, and it would be gone. I think it's important to narrow down what exactly it means to residents. And now, what will happen is we'll be adding costs to the life of these loans, extending them out and adding almost $500,000 in costs. And what does $500,000 in costs mean to the residents of Menasha? $500,000 could be a new recycling truck and a person to man it. I hear a lot about recycling. $500,000 could be a lot of street repairs that get done over the next few years. That's what it means to the residents of Menasha. Bonds are traditionally issued to fund a big project. We have a sparkly new project in Menasha. We want to issue some bonds to help pay for it. We have something to show for our bond at the end of the day. What do we have with this? Nothing. Refinancing is usually done at lower interest rates, which this is for part of the time. Usually results in saving money and leaves the city in a better financial position. Not sure that's happening with this today. And I questioned the process, the way this has all taken place. Yes, I agree that refinancing has been part of the conversation since we've been talking about the USDA loan. That never included bond issuance until a special meeting held on the fourth Monday of a month, not on the regular schedule. And all of it has taken place outside of the eyes of the public until tonight, when we're asked to make a decision because we've been backed into a corner. because now the options are really limited. And to this day, I'm not convinced that I know what options to deal with these blue payments have been discussed and thoroughly analyzed and evaluated to come up with a solution that is feasible, that allows for things to get done, that is flexible, and doesn't involve going to the bond market.
Quite a few of my questions were answered here. Thanks to Alderman Nichols. I heard from the desk here, this was taking place months ago. And to bring it on a Monday, non-council meeting, non-televised, that's not much transparency to the public. I think if we inform the public, they need to put together an extra $1 a week. We're gonna have a couple spikes here to get through this. And as Alderman Nichols said, we'll end up with $500,000 to show for it. So sometimes you just gotta tighten it up a little bit instead of going out borrowing right away for something. So. If it's explained properly to the public, I think they'll accept it. Sometimes we get spikes. In this case, we have a few, but we'll get through it.
Thank you, Mayor. John has clearly stated that without this refinancing, we're not gonna be able to make the payments on the city garage. And to sit there and seeming we did make the vote the last time to go ahead and move in this direction, we gave the state our notice, you know, it wouldn't be adding $50 here or there, because we'd actually have to pay off $4,250,000 right away, so that'd be a much larger increase. And I'm not one, after I saw the reaction to the assessed values that came in, both online and the phone calls that I made, I don't think you could properly try to sit there and get the residents to accept an increase, because they were all, I had so many calls on people that thought that their taxes were gonna be going through the roof because their assessed value, and I had to sit there and tell them what was going on with the decrease in the rate and how it was gonna probably affect the taxes. And quite honestly, I also told them about this, and they were all quite happy that the tax rate was gonna go down, I think the residents would be more happy that we have a lower tax rate for a longer time to give ourselves a little bit of breathing room. And the way it was explained, there have been, the numbers are not within these charts here, but there's cushions built in. So if something does happen, we do have some wiggle room. This is the proper thing that I believe that we need to be doing. Like I said, if this didn't pass, well, then we'd have $4,250,000 that we gotta pull out of somewhere immediately, and we don't get a city garage. And I'm voting for it because I believe it's the proper thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll try to keep this short, because I know I made my comments already, but I agree with Alderman Kruger. I'm not ready to raise taxes. This is probably one of the best plans that we could propose at this time because of the interest rates. I have, in my experience, since the 80s, they have never been this low. They have never been this low, and they're only going to get higher. So if we think that we're going to save some money in 2 or 3 years, I'm telling you, later on, midway through this borrowing, we're going to say, wow, look at where interest rates are now. And they made a smart decision back in 2019 because of that low interest rate. Bond markets are not only for projects. They are mostly used to do exactly what we are doing today. And in a way, it is. We are doing this for a project. We're doing it for the city garage. You know, there wasn't any concern by adding an extra $150,000 a year for a new bridge, but I won't go there. And lastly, we gotta stop using the term balloon payment. A balloon payment is in the millions of dollars. I have seen in my time up here, balloon payments in like, okay, last year then it's gonna be $2,400,000, you know? And the reason for that was because then they were gonna refinance. So, you know, this isn't a balloon payment towards the end. And I think, Greg explained it really well. You know, that, we have other things happening in the city at that time where we can pay off more, that's all. So I encourage my colleagues to vote for this. Let's vote.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Motion carried on roll call 5-2.
John, you didn't vote. You have Alderman number 4's mic.
Oh, no.
Thank you. I have been asked, we have two other groups of people in the gallery tonight. If we could move those two items up as well. We have a operator's license that's been recommended for denial. If there's no objection to moving up that item, actually, we could probably do both, since we probably should do them both at the same time. So it's item I-2. If we have a motion. Alderman Nichols?
Are we doing the approval first and then?
We can do them both, sure.
Okay. My papers are all out of sort here, but I
Yeah,
can
mine
make the
too.
motion. I make the motion to approve the beverage operator's license applications for the 2019 through 2021 licensing period as listed under approved in the city clerk's memo dated August 15th, 2019.
There's a motion, a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, are we ready? Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Motion carried on roll call 7-0.
And there is one license that was recommended for denial, and Mr. Patska is here, I believe, this evening. Turn us off so I can turn him on. It's okay. So if you'd like to tell us a little bit about your application and why you would like us to approve it, and if there's any questions, we could go from there.
Okay, my name is Derek Pasca. I know I have a couple of minor incidences, one of which I was not convicted of yet. That was an honest mistake. I'm going to try to get it dismissed. That was in the Wapaka area. But the rest of my stuff is minor, like traffic offenses due to operating outside of my hours at the time. I just took another position, newer position, as a manager on duty at the Menasha Piggly Wiggly. And I do need to be an operator's holder because the manager on duty has to have one. So it's gonna impair that, job. But, I mean, I guess I'm just, asking for the council to reconsider. I was approved in Grand Chute. I hold a 2-year valid operator's license there, and I heard that they were really picky. So, I mean, yeah.
Attorney Captain?
If I can just ask you some questions, have you had an opportunity to see the letter that was prepared by Lieutenant Thorne dated August 15, 2019?
No, I have not.
I'll give you just a little bit of time to look through it.
Okay.
So if I could ask you, I noticed that there, if we look at 2018, October 5th, operating while suspended. Can you explain what that was?
That was, I did have insurance. I did not have my SR-22 filed with the insurance. I do have to carry that for about another 5 months. That is from a prohibited alcohol concentration back in 2012. But yeah, that,
So the operating while suspended, can you comment on that one? It was the same day.
yeah, why is there two of them? Okay, that must have been, okay. Again, that was the same issue because my SR-22, my license got suspended because that's a little bit costly and I didn't have the extra for the SR-22, which is on top of your regular insurance. I think I had two different OWSs.
So you were driving even though you knew that your license was suspended?
Yeah, I mean,
And that happened,
now I'm all legal. I'm moving into a cheaper place because, I mean, my bills exceed my income. I mean,
will you have one pending as well, operating while suspended?
no, I do not. Oh,
It looks like something was just filed in 2019, July 9th.
yes, I was gonna contest that and see if, because Appleton usually dismisses that once you become valid, and I did become valid, renewed my license, and I now am keeping that up because I can't afford not to.
Okay,
I mean, my insurance, I pay, like, with the SR-22, I pay like $208 a month. So it's gonna drop in the next 4 months, but,
okay.
I mean, it's,
So one of the statutory provisions is that if someone is a habitual offender, and that can be any kinds of offenses, the person does not qualify for an alcohol operator's license. In looking at your record, what do you want to tell the common council about all of the offenses that you have here?
I don't feel like nothing, I mean, it's not an excuse, but it's, you know, it it was in my past. I take responsibility 100% for it. I mean, I'm doing good now. I'm holding my license because that was a big part of it. I'm not gonna let that suspend again because, it just causes problems. I mean, it's not really an excuse but I don't feel like a lot of these are, I mean, I understand the policy in place, but I don't feel like a lot of these or any of these are real that serious. I mean, they definitely could be worse. I guess I'm just asking for leniency. I mean, upon renewal, I know you have to go over this upon renewal in a year or two. I think it's 2 years. And they rerun everything. And I'm not gonna have anything further. I mean, I'm trying and, in life, I'm obeying the rules and laws. I mean, I guess that's all I can say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has any questions, or would any? Alderman Kruger?
Well, thank you, Mayor. You mentioned that everything's in your past, but what's this worthless check that just happened less than a month ago?
That's not a worthless check. That was an issue. I paid it immediately. It was an issue in Wapaka. I was in a hurry that day. I paid at the pump. There, it was not an intentional gas drive off. I paid at the pump. My card did not go through. I immediately took care of it. And I'm going to go to the court date, which is a non-mandatory appearance. I'm gonna go to the court date. I'm gonna show them the receipt and hopefully try to get it dismissed. But, I mean, I don't have a history of doing that. It was an honest mistake. I was in a hurry that day. I traveled back and forth because Wisconsin Rapids is my hometown, and I was in a very big hurry that day. And my card got rejected at the pump, and I wasn't aware of it. But I did take care of it right away, so that's what that was for.
I'm just gonna give you my thoughts. I mean, you have 17 incidents over the last 19 years. That's damn near an incident per year. And this council has rejected people that had a little as 2 over the last 10 years. I mean, to me, this doesn't bode well.
I understand that.
So is there anyone else, or does someone wish to make a motion? Alderman Kruger.
I'll make the motion to deny.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Ready? Just waiting until Debbie has it.
You usually explain about how you can still settle, but not by yourself.
Sweet, we can- Okay. We could have a roll call vote, please?
Motion carried on roll call 7-0.
So the motion is to deny, which means that you would have to have someone else with you if you're selling alcohol. You wouldn't be able to do that on your own. I'm not sure when he can next apply. I don't think there's typically a specific time period, correct? 1 year, okay, 1 year. I've been poked by a couple people. The police chief is back here. If you have any questions, he could probably help you. Could
Okay,
you-
well, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. I don't know if we want to do the other item that I think someone is here for? Sure. Okay, so the other item is ordinance 12. Which one?
Consent agenda.
Oh, I think the consent agenda first. Okay. So we're gonna go to the consent agenda first. Does anyone wish to have any items removed from the consent agenda this evening? Alderman Sevenick?
Item 7,
Okay,
item 3, 4, 5. That's it.
does anyone else want any other items? Okay. Do we have a motion for the remaining 3, 1, 2, and 6? Alderman Sevenick.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I would like to make a motion that we approve the Common Council minutes of 8/5/19, the Administration Committee's recommendation on 8/5/19 for CIVMIC dividend option number 2, and Planning Commission's recommendation of the certified survey map of 906 and 914 Gosling Way Court.
There's a motion and a second by Alderman Tom Grady. And if we could have a, oops, something just happened. If we could have a roll call vote, please. There's no discussion on consent agenda items.
Motion carried on roll call, 7-0.
Item 3 is a payment to Yankee General Contractors. Do we have a motion? Alderman Kruger?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make the motion to approve the payment to Yankee General Contractors Incorporated, contract unit number 2019-02, Province Terrace Trail, Nature's Way to US Highway 10 to State Highway 114, in the amount of $70,162.73, payment number 7.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Motion carried on roll call, 7-0.
Alderman Kruger?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make the motion to approve the payment to Northeast Asphalt Incorporated, contract unit number 2019-03, street reconstruction, various locations, in the amount of $274,098.56, payment number 1.
There's a motion and a second from Alderman Ted Grady. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Motion carried on roll call, 7-0.
Alderman Kruger?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make the motion to approve the set fee in lieu of on-site stormwater best management practices, BMP, at $16,007 per acre.
There's a motion and a second by Alderman Ted Grady. Is there any discussion? Go ahead. We didn't quite get there, so
Okay.
you're just barely
I was
in
wondering
time.
if Josh, if you would explain this a little bit further.
So, last year, I think it was a year and a half ago or so, you guys had instituted a fee for our Taco Pond. Developers have utilized that. However, in looking at our overall stormwater management system within the city, as well as what needs to be added to come into compliance with our MS4 permit, we felt that it was reasonable to allow developers to use any pond within the city, not just Taco Pond, but also to increase that cost to account for, the ponds that we're gonna have to construct in the future. We still feel that this is a pretty good deal for the developers because they get to develop the vast majority of their lot now instead of being limited to having to have a stormwater pond on site. And then also the 16,000 is more equivalent to what a pond actually costs. Most ponds, for a smaller site can run 25,000. If you start having to go underground or, some sort of unique pond situation, it can easily run over $100,000. So we do still feel that this is a fair deal for developers if they want to use it. They are not required to use it. If they do feel that they can use their site and do this for cheaper than the $16,000 dollars per acre of impervious, that's fine, they are allowed to do that, this just gives them another option.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Motion carried on roll call 7-0.
Item 7 is the certified survey map for 528 Milwaukee Street. Do we have a motion? Alderman Nichols?
Mayor, I move for the approval of the certified survey map at 528 Milwaukee Street with the following condition. The parcel is rezoned from I-1 heavy industrial to C1 general commercial contingent upon approval of ordinance O-1219.
Is there a second? Second. It's a motion and a second by Alderman Kruger. Is there discussion? Alderman Sevenick?
You might want to give him the mic. So what if we approved one and then not the other, or vice versa? You have to approve both, right?
Yes.
If
so
you want it to become what you're
Yes.
proposing.
Yeah, so, and as I was previously explained, as well as in front of Plan Commission, part of our subdivision ordinance and municipal code is that anytime any lot modifications are met, we look at bringing that property into legal conforming. Part of that was this property being rezoned from I-1 heavy industrial to C1 general commercial. This is a voluntary certified survey map, and as well as rezoning request from the property owner. I do know that there's some discrepancy there with the land contract owner versus the existing property owner. So again, the survey has a condition that the property is rezoned. Should the ordinance be approved that does not have the, or without the survey, that ordinance would at that point rezone a portion of an additional property, not the current, because the request for O12 is lot 1 of the CSM, not the existing lot. So they would need to be approved together.
So, and the short answer was they have to be approved together.
I pulled
Thank
a-
you, John.
I pulled a
mean,
John.
Sam.
Alderman Nichols?
Thank you. I want to back up a second on what you said. Lot modification. Could you tell us what is happening here that makes it a lot modification?
So the property lot line is being adjusted to bring the rear setbacks as well as the lot size into conformance with the C1 general commercial district. So again, any lot modification, lot consolidation, that sort of thing would be considered a lot modification.
And that is being requested and driven by the property owner in this instance?
Yes.
Okay.
So as explained to me previously, why the current land contract owners who are in front of us today, went with that route is that they could not officially purchase the property because there was an encroachment of a structure across the property line. So the CSM was needed in that fashion to allow them clean title to acquire that, officially acquire that property.
And the existing lot and use within that property are currently non-conforming within the heavy industrial district or zoning district.
Yes.
Okay, so the rezoning is being, the CSM along with the rezoning is being done at the request of the property owner, or this process is being driven by the property owner in an effort to induce a sale more than likely. And there's already a non-conforming use on that site. So the rezoning would bring the site into compliance. Conformance, thank you.
And I know there was a public comment made earlier regarding the front yard setbacks. I believe one of the front sides is within the 10 feet, so that setback will not conform unless the building was moved. However, the land use, the rear side setbacks, as well as the overall lot size would conform to the C1 zoning district.
Thank you.
Alderman Sevenick.
Thank you, Mayor. Sam, I was trying to find your memo, but in your memo, you had stated that the property was issued title by accident. If it's been issued, how is that considered an accident? Or by mistake, excuse me. Oh, thanks, Don.
It's actually the attorney gave it to me, so.
Oh, thank you, city attorney.
So what had happened was the, Miss Wilson, forgot your last name.
It's Barb.
Has a land contract for half of the property with the current property owner. That land contract, once it was recorded with the county took it upon themselves to create that separate lot. However, a property line cannot be modified unless it is accompanied in addition with a CSM as well as the deed. So what is stated there is that the county wrongfully created a separate parcel because the Plan Commission as well as the Common Council have not reviewed and officially approved that lot split, turning one lot into two lots. So that is where it is the wrongful doing of the county for creating that parcel without an accompanied CSM.
Would the county admit to that?
We'd have to have likely the attorney discuss that with them.
Yeah. All right, I guess I'm done.
Is there any further discussion? Alderman Taylor.
Sam, is it understood that the property owner does not want his industrial zoning taken away?
The land contract signees in front of us today do not want to lose their industrial status. The deeded property owner has voluntarily submitted this application to rezone the property. So with the land contract, it is very similar to a lease. So in this circumstance, it states that the full payment shall be made, I'm gonna use November 1, I don't have that in front of me, but by November 1. So should they not meet that obligation, they are currently lose their tenancy or the current property owner could kick them off that property because they don't have a legal land contract anymore.
So explain that, the people before us with the contracts, and there's another third party or second party involved with this, is selling them some land,
Yes,
and that other party has applied for the C1 zoning.
yes.
And
that was done, again, to make the CSM go through so the sale officially could happen.
if we let this industrial tonight, what process will have to happen in the future? or what would happen if we left this as industrial.
And approve the CSM, or
Either way.
What happens if we vote against this, is this question?
so, again, if it's voted down, then it would go back to the current property owner as well as, the individuals in front of us tonight to work through that situation. However, we are, again, kept with a non-conforming property that is a tavern use within the industrial zoning district.
Mayor, can I ask for unanimous consent to hear from the party here what they would like? Sounds kind of complicated here.
They did have nearly 10 minutes earlier today, so. Is there,
But we're at this point now, and I'd just like to hear from them
is
at the
there
very end.
unanimous consent, or does anyone object?
No, I object.
So then we would need a vote if someone objects. That's what she's working on here.
Can I, is there discussion on that vote or not?
Was there discussion? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure myself.
I think we can just vote.
I would just like to state my reason, 'cause I'm pretty
Sure.
sure I'm the
Since
only
you
one.
made the objection, I guess, if you want to
Thank
state
you.
your reason for
Thank
the
you.
objection.
I think that as the mayor stated, they were given almost 10 minutes during public comments today. And there was another time that they were here as well. It's been debated quite heavily at the Plan Commission as well, where they've had ample time to speak and state their case. And I firmly believe that it's up to this body to debate the issue and make a decision tonight.
So right now, what is on the floor?
Last time they were here, Mayor, they didn't even know about the public hearing.
So there's a motion on the floor to allow Ms. Wilson to speak this evening. If we could have a roll call vote on that, please.
Motion carried on roll call 4-3.
So you'd have an additional 5 minutes then to speak. Otherwise, I can't turn her.
Yeah, the only thing I really want to mention is, we're talking about Judy. You mentioned something about, and I'm going to just use her name, Judy going to have us rezoned as C1. That was not her intention. Her intention was to get the land insured, and the title done. We needed to be non-encroaching on railroad property. Okay, so if that comes back to your minds from all the times we've discussed this already, I don't think she even understood. I could call her today, I can guarantee you, she would not understand C1, C3, C5, C2. She only wanted,
Represented by your attorney.
yeah, she only wanted to get the
You know,
the
we're
land
having,
so I could purchase it. Oh,
we're having
sorry.
somebody talk about someone else's thoughts.
Well, he's telling you that she went there to have the C1 done. She did not. She went there to get a clear title on that property. And-
What's happening is right now is that this is all totally mixed up. It is so mixed up. We bought this property. We were encroached onto railroad property by 2 feet. We went to the railroad and asked them if they would sell us additional footage get out of the encroachment. Within this time, I learned today, which I told Sam,
Barb,
that we
Take
are
that
insured
microphone over there.
Well, he can get up.
by.
No, take the microphone over, that's fine.
Well, we wanna keep the camera
Oh,
on, James.
whatever. You can turn the
So
camera.
we are insured by the title. I found that out
Today, yesterday.
yesterday, okay? So, we are insured. The reason why that this parcel was sectioned off, 75 by 60, was to get us up and running until the attorney could figure out who owned the land, which was another 75 by 60. Who owned that land? It took us time to contact the railroad to have them basically sign off indicating that they did not own that property. We in turn went and investigated ourselves and found out that this parcel has been 60 by 155 since the 1800s. But there was no proof, there was no literature on it. So what happened was.
Hold on, we've also found two different parcel numbers, 395 and 396.
Which could have been changed throughout the years, but nobody knows anything because there's no literature on it. We did not ask to change our zoning. We didn't ask, we were trying to get out of the encroachment to purchase it, but little did we know until I called that the title company insured us, and there is a title for that property, 75 by 60.
With us sitting 2 feet
Right.
onto the railroad
Judy-
property.
Judy, in turn, what she was saying, Judy has nothing to do with this, meaning that her attorney is involved because we can't make a full purchase of this total lot until the railroad indicated to them that they do not own this other 75 feet next to our parcel. That's what took so long. It took over a year and a half. So I went back to the attorney and I told him I did my investigating on my own. I called the 1-900 emergency number that is right next to the railroad tracks on 6th Street, and I went that route, and I finally got the person that takes care of Wisconsin. I then went down and told him this whole deal. He sent me a contract for 12 feet. That 12 feet, we did not have to pay for because it wasn't our problem
To start
to
with.
start with, but we took it and we split it 50-50. Judy agreed, the attorney signed it, but it did not get turned in because of the fact that we wanted to hold everything because the other parcel was not being taken care of yet until the railroad signed off and said, that's not our land. He came into the attorney's office, he spread out all the railroad stuff, I was there, and he said, this is not our land. So in turn, it takes time now to do this, but all of a sudden, because of the fact that we are now getting close enough to buy this property, which ignited this CSM in front of Sam, so now he looks back and says, because we're changing now we have to change our zoning. It had nothing to do with Judy calling up and saying, hey, I want the zoning of my uncle's property. She had nothing to do with this. So what you're talking about is totally false. And I offered to this attorney to show up today, but no, he says this is whatever, so, and I don't blame him, because it's a mess. But as of right now, there's so many things that are twisted in a way where the reality of what's going on here is not really what's happening. And right now, we're just trying to, and once again, would I come back here after, and Sam, we had these conversations, would I come back here and say, hey, maybe there's things that I don't like about the heavy industrial versus commercial versus whatever, but I know one thing, that the value of that property and what I can do with that property has a substantial impact on how it is zoned. Not one by minimum setbacks, minimum lot sizes, how high you can go, how much you can build on, 30% versus 60. So it does have a direct impact on what we wanna do with that land. But right now, there is 75 by 60. All the title work is done by Evans. And as far as how the attorney had said it to us, his words, not mine, he says, but if you go in front, he says, and have them mention that Judy is involved and she had part of this, and she makes the determination of whether this gets
Done or not.
done,
Don't change.
commercial or not, that's wrong. We hold responsibility to that land as well as Judy. It is a shared title
Right
that's
now.
coming out of his mouth.
Yep, that we can't buy. We can't
So-
buy it outright.
That's how this all went. I know it's long, I know it's messy, but that's the way it is. It was not our intention, it was not Judy's intention. It was something that happened to get us out of the encroachment because it was brought up, but within that time, we are insured.
You don't,
Now, it takes the other portion that we have, the 70 by 60 next to us,
do you
now-
own the property right now?
through a
Do
land
you
contract.
own, that's not owning the property. You have a land contract,
It's a-
correct?
It's a shared title.
Yep, 50%.
I
I have
just got- I mean,
50%
at
with
least
You
it's
have
not
a
my words.
land contract.
Yes.
That's not fee title.
Your terms are probably different than what I understand, so I'm just letting
Well,
you
you
know
will
what-
own it once certain conditions are met. As long as you meet those conditions, whatever it is, pay something or do something or whatever, then you will own it. But right now, you do not own it.
So if I
explained
was,
this- if we would borrow this money from the bank and you wanna do this, you mean to tell me you'd call up a representative from the bank to be here to make that decision for
No,
us?
no. I'm just.
yeah, I mean, that's what our struggle
You're stating that you
is.
own it, but you do not own it right now.
I don't own my own home yet either then, because I still owe money to the bank. I mean, I'm not really following, I'm
that's-
sorry, I'm not trying to be a,
No, you have a deed and title to your home, correct? And then there's a mortgage.
I
But
don't have a
on
clear.
this property, you have a land contract, you don't have the title in your name. Correct?
was issued at council.
No, what he's talking about is title insurance, that the title company probably didn't, wasn't going to insure over the encroachment unless certain things were done, but it appears as if they've gotten that straightened out, so the title insurance company will insure over that if, something happens later where the railroad would say, they don't own it, or whoever owns it at that time. That's what they're referring to.
That parcel is titled, whether or not we are encroached or not.
Yeah, you're.
I just called the title company, and I just got done talking.
That has no effect whatsoever for
I
today's
talked, I
decision.
talked to a real estate attorney, it must be something.
yeah.
Is it not?
No.
Oh, okay. I,
No, this is
I'll let you go.
rezoning, this doesn't have anything to do with ownership.
I didn't bring up ownership, he did.
No, I asked you if you owned the property.
Well, it doesn't have anything to do with ownership, you just said that.
Okay, we're going in
Yeah,
circles
we are.
here.
I don't understand.
We've had another 10 minutes.
Yeah, we're good, let's move forward.
Certainly, you've had better luck with the railroad than we have, so
Yeah.
I guess maybe we'll direct Josh to call that emergency number. We have a resolution coming up shortly out with the railroad.
Okay, Alderman Grady.
Thank you, Mayor. I got a headache. I'm very confused, but I'm starting to see the light here. I got a question, Sam. In your memo on the back page, it says consistency with the zoning code. And it says, the existing land use of a mixed-use drinking establishment with second-floor residency units is not an acceptable use within this current zoning, I-1 zoning. Is that correct?
Yes.
So technically, if they shouldn't be able to have this establishment if we do not change it to a C1 general.
They would
Commercial.
still be considered legal non-conforming, so like under the grandfathered clause. So they can remain as they are today. But they do not, their use does not conform to our zoning code.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Kruger.
Thank you, Mayor. And Alderman Grodd, you're not the only one that's a little bit twisted on this one. If I'm understanding everything that everybody has said, the reason for all of this is so it can legally be sold. The property can legally be transferred, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And, no? No, he said that. Oh, well, okay.
So, if I may just step in there, and I know you're gathering your thoughts, but I have to state this too, because I wanna make sure we're upfront. So how it was explained to us with this CSM, it came to us because they could not get clean title on the encroachment.
Okay.
So that's where the CSM came from. So when staff had looked at that and talking with the surveyor and Stevenson, our planner, was talking with them at that time, so he may have been talking to representative, including the surveyor or the attorney at that point as well. That staff would not recommend denial, or would recommend denial of the CSM contingent upon the rezoning, and as well as, again, but we are not voting members. So that is likely why it became a volunteer request to rezone from I-1 to C1. Now, if it's stated that the concern was the southern portion of the property, not the encroachment, then the current property owner potentially would not even need the CSM to sell the property. And if they pulled the CSM, then the rezoning would go away as well. So again, but the legal property owner is not here to request that CSM to be pulled. So I just want to clearly state that should she say, you know, as the legal property owner, we do not need this CSM to legally sell the property, therefore we do not need the rezoning. This both gets denied. The property stays as status quo, a legal non-conforming use, and transfers real estate hands like any other property that throughout the city or the state that we don't get involved with. The only reason we are getting involved is because it was stated the encroachment was needed to be corrected to sell the property. So upon that, they submitted a CSM. Our review stated our recommendation is going to be denial unless it is accompanied with a rezoning. And they submitted a voluntary rezoning from I-1 to C1.
My only other question is, there seems to be if it stays commercial, they might do this, or someone might do this. If it goes to commercial, this may be done. If it stays industrial, there's possibilities of this. Could you briefly, because I know, for example, in industrial, you could put storage units on it, which you cannot in commercial. What other type of building restrictions would be in effect by making this switch from commercial to industrial? I mean, would they be able to add on to the current tavern, make a larger addition, or even put in a larger parking lot or something? Would that inhibit them from doing anything like that by bringing it over to commercial?
So within industrial, they cannot put an addition on there unless they go through a special approval process, as you cannot expand a non-conforming structure.
All right.
So by rezoning it to C1, again, that brings that site into conformance, which allows that use to be expanded upon in that fashion.
Yeah, thank you.
Alderman Repel.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was just, so in other words, I know Bill and Barb, Bill and Barb have been here. They really needed that lady to be here for correct? I mean, that's true, right? They needed that lady, Mrs. Brickle, to be here to voice her opinions. That's what we've been missing, right, Sam? Yes or no? No?
It depends what you would
Okay.
like from her. I don't know what her opinions are.
Okay. All right, because Bill keeps on saying what her opinion is, but maybe we needed to have her signed paper or whatever. So, all right, thank you.
Alderman Nichols.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's important to note that everybody, staff, Plan Commission, did their due diligence on this request. It came before Plan Commission, it was forwarded here. Council sent it back for more work. Staff did some more investigating on behalf of the Plan Commission, including reaching out to or having a meeting with Bill about, and where they were suggested some alternatives to the concerns. However, never heard back from any representative. Attempts to contact via phone were made on July 15th, 2019, where a voicemail was left. And so due diligence has been performed on this issue. It's also a request of the property owner, and any dispute, I believe any dispute between the property owner and the land contract owner should remain between them. This is simply a request from the property owner to the city about a rezoning. Thank you.
I think there's a motion on the floor, correct?
Yes, there is, to approve.
So there's a motion on the floor to approve the CSM with the contingencies upon the approval of ordinance 12. Seeing no further discussion, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Motion carried on roll call 5-2.
Then if there's no objections, if we could go down to ordinance 12, item 1. Alderman Nichols.
Mayor, thank you, Mayor. I'll move for the approval of O-1219, an ordinance amending Title 13 by making certain changes to the district, 528 Milwaukee Street, introduced by myself and recommended by the Plan Commission.
There's a motion and a second by Alderman Kruger. Is there discussion? Alderman Sevenick.
Just to clarify things, this is being a little technical, I think. I think because we did a, what do you call it? I'm sorry, my brain.
Talking about the CSM?
The study, the master plan, the
comp plan.
comprehensive plan, because it's in there. Sam is doing his job to follow through, to make sure that we follow that, but in my opinion, that is industrial. That whole area is industrial and should remain zoned industrial. And I don't believe for a second that the individual is requesting that this be zoned commercial. She's just trying to sell the property and just has really no idea, as someone just out in the public, knowing, like Bill said, what even an R1 is or an R2 or anything else. So I believe it should remain industrial. If it was my property, I would want it industrial, for the fact that I would be a business person and you would want to keep it for that. Now, I didn't want to speak before, because it seems like I'm speaking on everything lately, and it just, but anyways, I think we made a mistake on that last move. Some of you might be voting a certain way because you're afraid what he might do, and that's not why you should vote that way. I think that that property should remain industrial. What's to say that the company next door a manufacturer, a chemical company may wish to expand. You know what, we can't, we don't have the room here in Menasha, let's move out. Let's move out in some farmland or something. You know, I just don't like the attitude we have about people who employ us here in the city of Menasha. We have this anti-industrial, anti-business attitude lately. We want trails and stuff like that, but it doesn't bring in any tax revenue. So on this one too, I am gonna be voting no for the reasons that I stated.
Alderman Kruger?
Thank you, Mayor. The landowner has to file that paperwork, correct? To be able to do this. It's the landowner. Now, there's been other times people have come up here and said, well, they did this or did that and didn't understand it, and the attitude was, well, you didn't do your due diligence. And when a landowner requests something, I mean, I don't see anywhere where Sam did anything wrong or anything else like that. I'm not saying that you're accusing, I'm just saying the landowner, the person who owns the property is the one that filled out the paperwork. And as the attorney said, I don't think we can try to guess on whether or not she understood what C1 was or industrial or anything else like that. As far as we know, she fully understood it and still wants to do this.
So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to postpone this matter,
Okay,
so that we can find that answer.
Alderman Kruger has the floor right now.
I would like to finish though, but I understand it's industrial, but a little bit farther down the block, there's residential. Across the street, in all directions, there's residential. I mean, and my decision isn't based on some hesitation on what might be done with the property. My decision's based on the fact that the landowner came in, filled out the information for this request. And they're the ones that own the land. I mean, to me, it'd be no different than a landlord with a renter coming in and wanting to change it, and a renter coming in and saying, I don't want it done. And then someone siding with the renter. I mean, the landowner has rights, and they also have the responsibility to make sure they know what they're doing when it comes to the land. And if she really wants to sell this land, and this is the way it has to be done, as far as I'm gonna sit there and concerned, is that she really does want it. And if you wanna make a motion to postpone, I'm all for that, because more information would be.
You'll get more information,
Right.
for sure.
Thank you.
Will you
Alderman
second
Semiak?
that then?
I'll second that.
I made my motion to postpone this till next meeting.
Motion to postpone in a second. Is there discussion on the postponement, Alderman Taylor? Yeah.
Next meeting?
Is it on postponement? That's not about the postponement. So we have a motion to postpone on the floor. I guess we'll have to do a roll call vote.
There it is.
So it's to the next meeting, Alderman Semenick? Okay. I didn't hear if you had a specific date, so, okay. So could we have a roll call vote, please?
Motion carried on roll call 5-2.
Okay. We will be back at it at the next meeting. Item I is action items. I think we got everything before that, correct?
Hotel.
No, the first is the accounts payable and payroll. Alderman Nichols.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move for the accounts payable and payroll for the term of August 8th through August 15th, 2019, in the amount of $3,293,757.20.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Did you get who made the motions? Trying to do four things at once.
Okay, so Becky and Tom did it. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Motion carried on roll call 7-0.
Yep, item 3 is an intergovernmental agreement for a concrete reconstruction of, yes, I'm looking for the name of the street, Valley Road, but it's not in there anyplace. Okay, City of Appleton. Oh, there it is, okay. Okay. There we go. Director Radomski.
So I'm bringing this agreement back before you because costs for this project have doubled, for lack of a better term. So when we brought this to you, July of last year, preliminary estimates were that it was going to be approximately $315,000 to do this roadway, $1.25 million total project. This was a little bit steep, but at the same time, it was urbanizing a roadway, so it did make sense that it was, somewhat costly for that. Unfortunately, as we've gone a little bit further onto the design and gotten a little bit better handle on the stormwater portion of things and DNR requirements for us, we're now talking about a $600,000 project. This is, obviously a pretty significant increase to the project price, and I felt it was imperative to bring this back before you to make sure that you guys were still on board or not on board for this. One other thing that I do want to point out is that based on preliminary estimates, the way that we do special assessments of assessing for curb, street, storm sewer, 3 of the property owners on this street will see assessments of greater than $40,000, which is obviously far greater than I've ever, dreamed of assessing someone for a project. This is obviously a concern for me, and something that I feel that you guys need to, make a recommendation on this. Another factor in this is that about 5 years ago, we did mill and overlay our half of the roadway, from, within our city limits. So our portion of the roadway is not in terrible shape. It's actually in pretty decent shape. Appleton's portion and Fox Crossing's portion are in very rough shape. This roadway, really only services 51 residential properties and 2 multifamily apartment complexes. There's nothing else that really connects to this area. So I guess my goal today is to figure out if you guys want to continue with this project, or for me to inform Appleton or Fox Crossing that we cannot do this project for this price. My preliminary recommendation is that I think that this is a very expensive project for this area, but it is ultimately a council decision.
What has Fox Crossing and Appleton, have they rejected these, or are they going ahead?
They right now plan on going ahead with this project. This corridor is of more importance to their commercial sectors than it is to ours. So it is something that they probably will continue to move forward on. Not guaranteed, but they did indicate that they were wanting to move forward with this project at this time.
So if any one of the parties says no, then it doesn't get done?
We would be, obviously, if we are not going to be party for it and do not put aside funding for it, we cannot pay for it because we would not have any funding liability.
That's not my question. My question is, if we say no and they go ahead, do they send us a bill?
Preliminary indication is that if we say no, then it's back to the drawing board and we start this process all over.
Because we've got a number of them ourselves in the city that, Alderman Grotti Ted Grotti was just talking to me about an individual that wasn't happy with my answer, and the fact of the matter is that most of the property is in Fox Crossing, so we can't put sidewalks in over there. So I mean, here, this was the whole problem with becoming a village in that we could have worked out these borders so that we don't have these kind of issues, and here we are.
Yeah, in most instances, it's more so that if one party does not want to, do this, then the project does end up dying eventually. Usually it takes all parties to want to do it, to work together to get the project done. Usually if one does not, want to pursue it, that project does not get done.
Just so the public knows, there was a group of us that did try to work out the borders and straighten them out, so we wouldn't have these issues. That was rejected, and also it was lost in court. So here we are, this is what happens.
Alderman Repella.
Thank you, Mayor. So Josh, our portion is 600,000. Do you have the costs for the portion of Appleton and Fox Crossing? Oh, next page, okay. I'm sorry, I should have gotten it. There's this, they're having considerable more than, well, no, Appleton is a little cheaper than us, 594, and Fox Crossing is 752. Where did you say those landowners are that have to pay 40,000? Are they they're in the city of Menasha?
Yes, those would be 3 landowners who are currently on Valley Road. The residents on Garnet Court and Elcon Drive and Emerald Court all had paid previous assessments, so they'll be seeing either 0 assessment because they paid on the long side, or a portion based on the fact that it's a slightly shorter, they've already paid for their short side.
Okay, so those people know that they're already assessed at 40,000. Have they complained, or they haven't been told yet?
This is so preliminary, we have not informed them of this at all. This is, I did not want to stir any feathers for this. This is
Sure.
not a discussion that needed to happen with those property owners at this time. It was more so just, do we want to continue with this project before we go any further?
I think the 600,000 is a huge cost, but we've talked before, the streets are not gonna get any cheaper. Fox Crossing is 752, Appleton is relatively the same cost as us. If they're willing to go along with fixing the road, I don't think it should be piecemeal. I think it should be a whole new road, not just because Menasha put in our side is pretty good, and let Appleton and Fox Crossing make theirs better. I'd rather see a complete road, even though I don't travel down that road very often. No? Okay. All right. So, all right, thank you.
Alderman Kruger.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think this is a project that we should do at this time. I think the cost is quite significantly higher than what we planned on. So I'm gonna make the motion to not pursue the intergovernmental agreement for the concrete reconstruction urbanization project between the city of Appleton, Menasha, and Village of Fox Crossing from Valley Road west of Chain Drive to east of Forest View Court at this time.
Can we add because of the increased cost?
Yes, add because of the increased costs.
And I don't know was there a second?
I didn't hear a second.
Alderman Grady, Ted Grady. Okay. I'm not sure who's next, Alderman Nichols. Whoops, I'm sorry, I turned you off instead of on.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Radomski, is there any way, well, I'm sure there's a way to rebid or redesign parts of this project? I can't help but notice that concrete pavement is used for the whole project. And so I'm curious about the design specifications and if those can be altered in any way.
That is one thing that I will approach Appleton and Fox Crossing is I will state that the current plan of the 48-foot urbanized section was denied. However, if there were other plans such as keeping it as a rural cross-section with ditches, seeing as the vast majority of the cost is in storm sewer and concrete, they may be amenable to doing a mill and overlay in that location, something like that. I'm not, but I think it was imperative for me to state that the urbanized cross-section, that you guys are rejecting that. They may come back with an alternate plan to do a mill and overlay of that street or something, a little bit different. This doesn't prevent them from doing that. It's just, we don't want to go forward with the 48-foot concrete street, new storm sewer, stormwater pond, all that stuff.
Well, and essentially, we're looking at a 3-lane road when I'm not convinced that's what's really needed there.
The reason that they chose the cross-section they did is because it matches the Valley Road on both ends of the project. So right now, east and west of that project, there is a 48-foot curb and gutter section, so.
Thank you for making that clarification when you send off the request.
Alderman Grady.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank you, Josh, for bringing this forward to the council, and instead of spend, we're looking at the other end of the dollar and keeping our taxpayers down and keeping things in line. So I appreciate you with the foresight of bringing this to our attention.
Alderman Taylor.
I know in the past, the city of Menasha has taken care of that road out there much better than the town or the city. So we were forward thinking, we were maintaining it properly, and they weren't.
So seeing no further discussion, if we could have a roll call vote, please. This is on Valley Road, to not pursue the contract with Valley Road.
Motion carried on roll call 7-0.
Item 4 is the hotel study proposal. Do we have a motion? Would you like, Alderman Kruger.
I'll make the motion to approve the hotel study proposal and acceptance.
Second.
So motion and a second to accept the proposal by Place Dynamics, correct? Is there any discussion? Alderman Taylor.
Sam, can you tell us the difference? It's like twice the price here from one company to the next. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. So within the request for proposal, there was a mention of banquet hall feasibility. So part of the large cost estimate was due to one company taking that proposal, taking that verbiage of hinting towards a banquet hall and actually doing the feasibility study. The other company is more or less a company that was just looking at strictly the hotel study. I think from a proposal standpoint, I know Core Distinction Group did just do a hotel study within the village of Kimberly. So again, to make sure it's very personalized with Menasha, to add diversity to the region, I think would go a long way with a potential developer when we start to look into this, actually implementing this study. If it's kind of that same stamp study that's throughout the region, that might actually scare a developer off. So we want to make sure that if we are spending any type of money, that it is going to be feasible, personalized, and thoroughly done for Menasha.
And you didn't think that would happen with the $8,000 study?
I think for the $8,000 study, I think we will still get a good study. However, I think it will be more of a boilerplate study versus as personalized specifically for Menasha.
And that's worth the other $8,000. We're going to get that much more out of it?
That as well as the additional banquet hall feasibility aspect to that. So again, looking at a hotel, there needs to be a reason for people to stay at that hotel. One of the things that was mentioned within the downtown vision plan was potentially a banquet hall near the Menasha Dam. And one of the things that, you know, it's very skeptical of a banquet hall facility because they do have a short margin. So in order to add that banquet hall feasibility to this will give us a clear answer whether or not that is feasible or not.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Motion carried on roll call 7-0.
Okay, now we're gonna move down to K2, ordinance 18. Do we have a motion? Alderman Sevenick?
Before I make a motion, are you recommending that we table this?
Yes, so O-18-19,
Still want to work on some,
yes.
okay, with sister cities or something?
Well, so
That's what you
there's
call them.
there's a accompanied ordinance with this to the chapter 18, the zoning code. So we looked at the public hearings throughout the entire municipal code. This one just deals with Title II, and that goes through the administration, then the common council, where the other one goes through plan commission, then directly to council. Plan commission did hold their ordinance as they're looking into potential other options for making sure the public is aware. So again, our recommendation would be to table this until such a time that the accompanied sister ordinance would be brought forward.
At this time, Mayor, I'll move that we table O-18-19.
There's a motion and a second. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Item 3 is ordinance 19. Do we have a motion? Alderman Sevenick?
And this, after reading planning commission, you guys did have a lengthy discussion on this particular matter, and it was recommended by the planning commission. So, Mayor, at this time, I'll move for O-2019.
There's a motion,
Like-
oops, 019, right?
O-19, excuse me, I got ahead of myself.
Okay. There's a motion and a second by Alderman Kruger. Is there discussion? Alderman Taylor?
Sam, for the public at home, could you explain this a little bit?
Yeah, so this is clarifying the exceptions within the mobile storage regulations, basically exempting out unattached licensed semi-trailers being used ancillary to the industrial business within the I-1 and I-2 zoning district to be exempted out from the mobile storage requirements, which only allows 2 mobile storage facilities per property and requires a permit, and those can only be there for 90 days. So facilities that currently operate with trucking their equipment, such as Essity, just off of Taco Street, this would make that use conforming. We did have a clause in there regarding the screening, so that would be kind of any new request for this type of use would require that screening requirement.
What about somebody leasing out their lot to allow another company to use it?
So the way this ordinance was drafted was to be used ancillary for that business, because that is what kind of the direction we had looked at this spring when the concern had arose regarding semi-traffic trailers, that it would be detrimental to those businesses that are using that. So that is how this ordinance was written. It's ancillary to that business, not necessarily leasing out major spaces.
There's a business here in town that has another company using their parking lot. Will that stop that from?
We'll have to look into that.
But this ordinance would stop that, right? Correct? That's
I
gonna be-
can't speak hypothetically
The
on
pri-
that
well,
at
I'm
this
just saying
time.
the primary business, it's for that business, not for an outside business to be using that.
That is how this ordinance is drafted, yes.
Okay. And also, I had a complaint from a party with these pods. Does this cover these outside storage or anything? That's a whole different thing besides these pods that they drop in front of people's homes for up to 90 days.
Yep, so this is just the semi-trailer exception. So those pods, we do take complaints and follow up with those.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Grady.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Question concerning the, these trailers shall be concealed on the public right of way. What's going on with the Coakley built land site? They haven't done any landscaping yet to hide those trailers or anything? What's going on there? Do you know what their plan is, or?
So the ordinance in front of us is to add that requirement. So again, that property does not have any of that landscaping.
Is there going to be a time element to that? Otherwise, they could stretch it out for, you know, within 6 months or something, so they can't stall us?
So the attorney and I did have a conversation regarding that, of adding, I forget your legal language, but adding a clause in there that, you know, within 1 year, within 5 year, all properties shall conform to this. So I will let her explain that further if you have questions on that.
Thank you.
It's up to you. No? Did you want to,
What they want.
did you want to fill us in on what the discussion was, and was it legal or not legal?
I was just inquiring when I initially read it, should there be a certain time frame within which compliance with screening needs to occur? So that's normally what would be in an ordinance, allowing some period of time to go by. Otherwise, it would be effective immediately. Obviously, we would, in enforcement, would have to allow people a certain amount of time to get something together, but it would be up to the Common Council if they wanted to insert language that would allow compliance with the screening within a certain period of time, 6 months or whatever it is.
So would this not be considered existing non-conforming if they're already doing it?
The Common Council has the ability to require an added provision,
Okay.
which would be screening. If that's important to the Common Council, then they would say that all trying to think of how we would say it, but all screening must occur within, you know, a certain period of time.
So the way it's currently written, they're required to screen if they're doing this. It's just, yeah, okay. Alderman Sevenik.
Okay, I just, and I don't have a problem with that portion of it. I just want to get a clarification here after Alderman Taylor's talked to you. I think there was a miscommunication between the two of you. A lot of this dealt, are you kidding me? A lot of this dealt with these type of storage units that go on, like, come off trains and then they sit there. None of us like those, and we had issues with that throughout the city, and we wanted to address that. And then when it came up with the Coakley property, I definitely didn't want to see that over there either, and that's not what his business does. Okay, so we got to get that clear. And the semis that are used are rotated, so that's what this ordinance allows, as long as there's, you know, a rotation. But where I was a little concerned with was with your answer with Alderman Taylor. He is allowed to lease that property, but not for storage. We understand that. but he should be able to lease that property to others that want to put trailers there. That's what his business is there. So if that's not the case, well, let's hear what your answer is.
So, as written, it was being staged and ancillary to the principal use of the business. So
Okay.
and
So you're
we-
saying that what he's doing now, he is leasing some of the space over there for the tissue mills during their transition. So you're saying this ordinance would prevent him from doing that?
That would be my interpretation, because.
Then I withdraw my motion, and this is what I think of this ordinance.
But
And that's
again,
not-
like I stated, this is
It-
coming from.
It's not really appropriate to.
Doesn't matter, and you don't have
enact an ordinance
Excuse me, I withdrew my
on
motion
one
on the ordinance.
business.
Doesn't matter, it was the way it was done. So anyways,
And you
I
can't just
withdraw my motion.
withdraw.
Withdraw my motion.
The council
Can't.
rules state. Where do they state? Because we've had this a couple times already. So,
I'm also no longer the sponsor. Let's put it to you that way too. So you can't have an ordinance without a sponsor.
you can ask to have your name removed from the
You betcha.
sponsorship.
That's like telling us and telling people that how to run their business. We shouldn't be telling people how they should be running their business.
And if I may, and again,
Sure,
because
go
I
ahead.
feel like, you feel like I was trying to be sneaky. The last thing I wanna do is try and start any type of fight with any type of business. Whatever businesses are here, we are here to support those businesses. How this ordinance was drafted and we discussed following this spring, with that ordinance, this is what he had, the owner of that company came to the table and stated, he needs this type of use to be used for his facility. So that's how that was drafted and brought forward. If there's a business that is now using it to lease to other individuals, that is a completely another.
That's
topic.
almost like telling these storage units that we have here, you can only lease to certain people.
Okay, so what the rules say is after a motion is stated by the presiding officer, it shall not be withdrawn except by the unanimous consent of the common council. So you could ask for unanimous consent to withdraw the motion.
Well, I can't do that. Someone left the building. Yes, obviously, this body understands that I am not in favor of this. You and I had lengthy discussions about this, and this was never my intent at all. And that's why my name's on there, because I was trying to take care of storage units and landscaping the area and making it look better. I didn't want to tell a business how he's got to run his business, whether they're his trucks there or not. And you know what? They're not his trucks. They've never been his trucks. They're trucks that come in that lease his building and do business with him, and they're doing business with him. Tissue mills or whatever, they're doing business with him.
Well, then it would be fine
So-
if they're
Then
doing
No,
business with them.
no, the way
Anyhow,
he's
you
got it-
asked for unanimous consent?
Yes, James, you weren't here. I'm asking for unanimous consent so I can withdraw my motion.
Is there any objection? Seeing none, the motion is withdrawn. I don't know if someone else wants to make the motion or if we just want to move on.
Mayor-
If I may offer an amendment to kind of.
I would like to just postpone this, and I will sit down with Sam and work out something better or different.
So,
Probably should have done a little more of that. So I'm gonna make a motion to postpone this for the next meeting. And I will have meetings with Sam and work out,
postpone it.
and also work out the addition that Alderman Tom Grady brought up about, the time frame for landscaping and
He
this.
withdrew his name.
Well, I'm not sure that we
I can
wanna-
bring back any ordinance I want, city
Well-
attorney.
hold on, Alderman Sevenick, I don't think we necessarily wanna bring it back though, because it sounds like you wanna change it.
I'm changing this ordinance. This is a
So-
dead
You
ordinance.
So the best thing to do would just to be
Well,
take no action now, and we'll come back with something different at a new meeting if you desire to do that.
So the council understands that's what I'm gonna be doing.
That's fine. Did anyone else wanna make a motion regarding this? Alderman Taylor?
Yeah, I still have the floor, and I would just say if there's any council members that have something addition that they wanna add to this, like Tom did, to let Sam or myself know.
There's no motion to postpone, Mayor.
We don't need one. Alderman Nichols, did you wish to make a motion on this item?
Yes, seeing as it was recommended by the Plan Commission, and we can either vote it up or down tonight, I'd like to make a motion for O-1919, an ordinance amending Title 13, Chapter 1, Article G of the Code of Ordinances regarding mobile storage regulations, and I will put my name on it.
Is there a second? There is no second, so the motion dies for lack of a second. And then we'll move on to item 4. Is there a motion regarding ordinance 20? Alderman Taylor.
I just had a question for the attorney. We had someone tonight suggest that our public hearings weren't properly done properly, and I was just wondering her opinion on that.
A Class 2 notice means that it needs to be published once a week for 2 weeks. That is what occurred. It does not say 7 days in between publishing. That is not what the ordinance, actually, that's the statute. It's not what the statute says.
So everything was done correctly, right?
Pardon?
Thank you.
Is there a motion? Alderman Sevenick?
Okay, so this one deals with the different types of commercial zoning for C1, C2, C3, and C4.
Yes, commercial uses within those commercial districts.
So I'll make a motion at this time for O-2019.
There's a motion, a second by Alderman Kruger. Is there any discussion? Alderman Taylor?
Sam explained to us why this is here and what we've done.
So as kind of stated, there has been inquiries into some commercial properties within the C1 zoning district. So many of those uses would not be permitted. And again, this kind of goes above just one specific use. It does touch on printing, research, technical based uses, as well as the light manufacturing. So there is a proposal in front of Plan Commission contingent upon this approval of this ordinance in front of Plan Commission tomorrow regarding approval of a dental lab facility within the 3rd Street Market. So that facility would add roughly 65 jobs. And again, when comparing our municipal code to other municipal codes within the surrounding area, it's not that uncommon that these types of facilities such as light manufacturing are permitted as a special use permit. So this is being brought forward to basically relax our ordinance and allow some of those vacant commercial sites to potentially be used as
Why aren't we just taking this per business with a special use permit? Why are we, you said, use the word many and that we're relaxing, and I don't like the sound of that at all. So why aren't we just taking, you got building A,
within our
building C.
current ordinance, it is not permitted. The property is zone C1 and the land use such as a dental lab is not permitted within the C1 zoning district at this time.
Okay.
Nor is such uses as a printing facility, sports graphics, things of that nature. Those would have been previously legal non-conforming.
Okay, but there could be a special use permit for that, right?
No, not unless this ordinance would be approved. That is what this ordinance is allowing that to happen.
So, I don't like that we're relaxing and, we're trying to move forward, we're trying to clean our city up, we're trying to, move onto a different plane, but now we're gonna relax this and allow more manufacturing into a residential neighborhood.
Potentially relaxing wasn't a good word.
That's what you
Allow the plan commission and the common council to review specific types of land uses such as this for individual approval within the C1 zoning district.
Okay, so we got someone coming tomorrow and, for a dental lab, and that's why we're doing this tonight, so you can get that through tomorrow.
Again, if this ordinance would not get approved, that type of use would not be permitted within the C1 zoning district.
Okay, and, what's the other side of the coin here, besides printing and some other companies you had mentioned?
Within as the ordinance states, within the C1, this would be opening it for light manufacturing, assembly, printing, publishing, engraving, research, laboratory testing, and technology-based uses as special uses within the C1 zoning district.
And, if this ordinance passes, can we contest those? If somebody comes in with a large printing company, they're exhausting all these fumes or something, can that be contested, or is that just gonna get rubber stamped then through?
That is why we added those definitions in there. So light manufacturing, is
So we have to-
primarily held within the interior of building, with minimal nuisance such as odors, smells, sounds, that sort of thing.
Okay, and, it's just those list of businesses that you just gave me, that's all we're expanding this to?
As the ordinance states, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say I think this is a very good fit for multiple reasons, and I don't want to get too specific, but we have an empty building. It's been empty too long. It's a nice, quality building. It sits in a TIF, We want to see improvements in our TIF area. And it also does something that I'm always in favor of, and it brings people into Menasha. And they're good paying jobs, 60+ employees. I'm all for this. I know that it seems like we're doing it for a specific business, and Sandy's almost absolutely right, but I think things have changed. Not everybody can be a huge manufacturer in our community. There are many of these small businesses like this that are growing and need this space. And I think it's a good fit, and it's going to be a good fit for Menasha, not just in the short term, but I think in the long term.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say that stuff like this, changing zoning to accommodate new things coming in, it's always done all the time. Agricultural's turned into residential, industrial's turned into residential, vice versa. And when the opportunity arises, it's always best for the city to sit there and take care of it, and try to do what they can to improve the city. And I know there was a comment before, but Sam, could you please explain what manufacturing is, that it does not include beverage making or pizzas and all that? Can you just quickly define what the manufacturing parts that would need a permit for? The light manufacturing.
So again, as defined within the ordinance, light manufacturing includes the processing, fabrication, assembly, treatment, and packaging of materials and finished products, where all operations within, with the exception of loading, are conducted entirely within an enclosed building. So those other types of uses, there would be a clause there that are placed within their most accurate use. A pizza making would be a restaurant.
Seeing no further discussions, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Motion carried on roll call 7-0.
Item five is resolution 20 regarding CIVMIC. Is there a motion? Alderman Nichols.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move for the approval of R 2019, a resolution approving the City of Menasha's liability insurance renewal through Cities and Villages Mutual Insurance Company, introduced by Mayor Merkis and recommended by the Administration Committee.
So motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Motion carried on roll call 7-0.
Item 6 is resolution 21 requiring the repair of at-grade crossings at Racine, Appleton, and De Pere Streets. At Grady crossings, okay, yeah, it could work. Is there a motion? Alderman Kruger?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make the motion to approve R-21-19, a resolution requiring the repair of at-grade crossings of Racine Street, Appleton Street, and De Pere Street, introduced by Mayor Marcus.
Motion and a second. Alderman Taylor?
Josh, if we picked up the phone and called those emergency numbers, I know I have in the past, and you do get a live person. And have we gone that route at all, just to get into the?
I have tried several different things. I have tried the emergency number. I've gotten nowhere with any of them.
Did
you know,
anybody answer?
Honestly, it was a couple weeks ago, and I can't remember offhand. I've had so much other stuff going on that I can't remember. But yeah, I've tried emailing, I've tried calling, I've tried, going through the state representatives, and yeah, this is the last effort to get them taken care of.
We actually worked with the public affairs person about a year ago who guaranteed us that within weeks, someone would be there to fix those, and nothing. So we've got a lot of runaround with the people that we did talk with. We've tried multiple different directions to do this, and this appears to be our last way to do this.
Oh, as we just heard, it took somebody else a year and a half to get something out of them.
Sure.
Thank you.
They won't be fixed by the time Josh leaves us, no. I doubt it, maybe. But Alderman Kruger?
Thank you, Mayor. Josh, really quick, we had a talk several weeks ago, and the way you explained it, I just want you to confirm for the public that this is the last thing that we have in our arsenal to try to get this done. And could you please explain if the railroad is still required to do it, and if they don't do it, what the consequence may be down the road?
So the way that this will work is this resolution will be sent first-class mail to Canadian National. This resolution informs them that they have 30 days to contact us with a plan to repair these crossings. If they either do not contact us or say that they will not fix these crossings, then we go to the Office of Commissioner of Railroads and, for lack of a better term, sue the railroad to get these crossings fixed. At that point, there would be a hearing in Madison where we would have the pictures and descriptions and any any residents that you know who want to write a letter saying that they have a rough crossing, that's where those letters would come into play. Any evidence that we can to present that these are actually rough crossings and need to be repaired would be presented to a panel in Madison, who would then make a determination as far as whether the railroad would be required to fix these within X period of time or not. The process generally takes 6 to 9 months, so I'm guessing the earliest that we would get a fixed railroad crossing at this point would be summer of next year. The Office of Commissioner of Railroads realized that you can't get asphalt after Thanksgiving, so they're obviously gonna give the railroad enough time to do it during actual construction season. But yeah, this is this is kind of like the nuclear option to go off and go this route, but we've tried a number of different options, trying to work with them, trying to email them, trying to email their bosses, talk with their bosses, and it's, we've even offered to provide the asphalt. We've even offered to provide the crews to be able to do some of the work, and they have not taken us up on that at all. So this is, an option that we have, unfortunately are forced to go down, but it's a option we need to at this point.
And if the state says that they don't see that the railroad really needs to do it at that time,
Then we're out of options.
they're out of option, and basically the railroad doesn't have to touch the crossing, and there's nothing more we can do, correct?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Taylor.
The one crossing is on a state highway though, correct? De Pere Street is a state highway.
De Pere Street is on a state highway, yes.
Seeing no further discussion, if we could have a roll call vote, please. I suppose, well, it looks more official as a roll call vote.
Motion carried on roll call 8-0. 7-0, sorry.
Item L is appointments. There is one this evening. Is there a motion? Alderman Nichols.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move for the mayor's reappointment of Matt Vanderlinden to the Redevelopment Authority for the term of September 1st, 2019 to September 1st, 2024.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item Q is adjournment. Do we have a motion?
Sure, we didn't miss something.
I think we hit all of them. Did we have a motion to adjourn? There's a motion by Alderman Kruger and a second by Alderman Ted Grady. All those in favor? We are adjourned.